Okay, glad to see everyone out tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. I have 7 o'clock, so if you would please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First, we have a couple special presentations I'd like to make, so we'll go ahead with that. Okay, so first off, hope everybody can hear me okay. We have, for the Pendleton Community Center would be first, we're presenting 3 checks to 3 organizations the council has allocated funds for. This year's going to be $1,600 each. First on that list is Pendleton Community Center. Is anyone here from the community center? If so, we'd like to present you with this check. If not, we'll hang on to it till we can find somebody. So I don't hear anybody, don't see anybody, so we'll assume there's nobody. Next, we have a check for the Pendleton Foundation for Black History and Culture. Is anybody here for that?
I guess I'll do that.
You gonna take it? We need a photo op too. You gonna come
Oh,
over here?
no.
Maybe we won't break the camera together.
Come on, Sandra. You got to get a photo op here.
Yeah. So here we go. Present you with the check. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And lastly, but not least, we have the Pendleton Rhinos getting a check. And I believe I saw Jasmine here this morning. You can come up. So we want to present them with the check too. We really appreciate these organizations and all they do for our town. We appreciate it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They all do an awesome job. And we've got one more here. We have a proclamation that I would like to read. Whereas the Town Council of Pendleton, South Carolina recognizes outstanding members of the community, and whereas Carolyn Elaine Galloway is hereby recognized and honored for recently being appointed the first African American and the first woman to become a municipal court judge in the city of Anderson. And whereas Carolyn Elaine Galloway graduated from Pendleton High School and the University of South Carolina of Law, and whereas Ms. Galloway is the mother of 3, grandmother of 7, and great-grandmother of 1, and whereas Carolyn Elaine Galloway exemplifies the power to make a difference through her dedication and selflessness to public service. Now, therefore, we, Mayor Frank Crenshaw and the Pendleton Town Council, do hereby proclaim October 4th, 2022 as Carolyn Elaine Galloway Day in the town of Pendleton, and we encourage all citizens to recognize and celebrate her exceptional accomplishments. Ms. Galloway, if you would come up. Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, Okay, next we have the approval of minutes. Hopefully council's had a chance to look over the minutes from prior meetings, and having said that, are there any corrections need to be made?
I'm looking for that, Frank. Hang on a second.
Okay, Mike, we'll give you plenty of time. We're gonna be here a while.
I want to approve the minutes. I read through the minutes.
Okay,
I had a question about one thing, and it might have been a typo, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus here,
okay, all right.
I don't know if I'm gonna find it now. Mr. Paul Hickman had a comment about the oil mill last time,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to make sure I read that comment correctly and understood it correctly. About rodents and the wherewithal with rodents and bugs and all that, you know, with the problems we're having with cleaning up that oil mill site. So if somebody can jump ahead and find it for me, I apologize.
Page 2, third paragraph from the top. It's actually going to be page 6 of your packet.
Here it is.
You got it?
How hidden stuff.
Yep. Let's just, Paul Hickman stated he appreciated Dryson's comments. He thanked the council for finally getting serious. He further stated a sidewalk needs to be installed through the area and mosquitoes and rodents need to be treated, which are the cause of the property. What do we mean by the cause of the property? I'm not throwing anybody on the
No,
bus.
we're just saying that the property is the site of the property is creating the rodents and mosquitoes.
Okay,
Do you
so,
want us to clarify that?
well, I want to clarify the fact that the town acknowledges that, and it may take a while to get that cleaned up, but can, you know, and I'm not an expert on this, but, you know, can we find an expert to chase these rodents out or, you know, do something about, you know, the rodents or that?
I mean, that's just part of your enforcement activities. I mean, you know, we're in a path right now.
But right now, you think we need to correct the minutes?
Well, I don't know if we need, I just want to make sure the minutes are, you know, are corrected so that we understand it and that, you know, if we need to do something about it, act upon it, you know, we can possibly, you know, take action on that. That's all.
Okay.
Other than that, I think the minutes are fine.
Okay, so I'm sorry, is there a correction of the minutes?
Well, I just want a clarification of the minutes. That's all.
Clarification, okay, all right. So,
Okay, I'm with you.
Are you with me?
And I know what to add here
Okay,
for you.
okay.
Okay,
Because I know
yes.
the oil mill's we're not gonna get that cleaned up overnight. So
You just want to clarify.
I want to
that
clarify if
sometime
there's
in the
anything the
near
town
future,
can
his
do
statement is addressed.
to at least address that possible issue. Okay,
Okay. Got it.
thank you.
okay,
Otherwise, I will approve the minutes as read and written and read.
as presented, okay. Because we haven't actually
Sorry,
read
you're
them.
making amendments.
Okay, you read them, yes. Okay, so
I'm
we got a
just adding
motion,
comment from a council.
Unless if somebody else has some comments, that's fine too.
okay. Any more comments about the minutes? Okay, I'm assuming none, so do we have a motion that we pass the minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion,
Okay,
based on all my previous comments.
okay, great. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move on here to council. Let's see, I missed council updates, but there were no updates, so we're okay. So we'll move on to public comments. This section of comments will be for comments only. No questions will be taken at this time. Questions will be taken at the end of the meeting. There's a 3-minute limit. No action will be taken on these items. You must be a business owner, a property owner, or a resident of the town of Pendleton to speak in public comments. The 3-minute rule is actually, looking back on our rules, is actually incorrect. It's supposed to be 2 minutes, but if it's okay with council, although I am committed to following the rules, and I've had that pointed out to me. So we want to follow the rules. But if it's all right with council, I just hate to say 2 minutes now, and as many of these people are here. So hopefully everybody's okay with me allowing 3 minutes. And if not, speak up.
I'd be the last to cut anyone short.
Okay, okay. So 3 minutes, so you'll have 3 minutes to talk, and it'll be, and that'll be it. So hopefully you can say what you need to say in 3 minutes. So having said that, is there anyone out there that'd like to make a comment? I got a feeling there is. Come on up. And you need to state your name and address when you get up there,
We're
please.
each going to speak for it.
Okay, that's fine.
Carolyn Moore, 540 East Main Street.
Okay, got it.
All right, this is such an emotional event for our family, especially our dad, Ben Morton, who can't be here tonight due to health reasons. Our family has called the Morton Farm home since 1856. The 5th through the 7th generational owners, which are my dad, my sister and I, and our children, have come together and after much heartfelt and sometimes painful conversations, decided to sell this property. Daddy has moved from the farmhouse into a smaller home as the upkeep was too much as he grew older. Daddy suffers from declining health. We check on him daily. Sadly, Mom did pass away in the middle of all of last year's events. Mom and Dad worked hard to make a better life for themselves and their family. It's time for another family to enjoy our 1856 historic home. It's time for other people to raise their families on this piece of property. I want to share with you also that we have received a lot of support from friends and family and neighbors. They even went so far as to gather signatures of support for the rezoning in the form of a petition. We have over 200 signatures at this point, which all of them are all local, or they are from those who have deep roots in this community and love this community. There is a small group of people who are opposed to changing the current zoning, while there is a very large group of people we feel in the community that support this change. I would hate to see a small voice overpower the majority of the citizens of Pendleton who support our family and these necessary changes. So I just want to say that the town of Pendleton staff recommendation is a yes for approval, and the planning commission voted unanimously for approval. So that we hope that you guys will vote yes tonight as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Mary Morton Barnett, 207 Plantation Drive, Pendleton.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Ben Morton's youngest daughter, Mary Francis. Our family farm now consists of 28 acres, which is unviable for commercial farming, given the large wetlands in the old farm pond area. Over time, previous generations have bought and sold adjacent surrounding properties as agriculture flourished and then diminished in this area. It was once a small dairy farm. My dad has used those fields for hay harvesting. Many individuals and families have benefited as bits of the farm have been sold for individual homes over the years. We are simply asking for the property to be rezoned and sold as we believe we should have the right to do. Our developer has worked with the town of Pendleton, even doing more than is required. They've held community meeting before submitting any official paperwork to the town, and it was well received. They've had many meetings with townspeople and staff. The town of Pendleton's staff recommendation, I will say again, for this rezoning is for approval. The planning commission, who works tirelessly studying and discussing and reviewing these planning requests, voted unanimously yes to approve. And these approvals were based on many facts. This approval recommendation is based on many facts, two of which I'll highlight. The first, this parcel is located in an area with residential property surrounding on all sides. The property is in a neighborhood of residential homes, mobile home lots, subsidized low-income housing, and the Pendleton Public Works facility. And secondly, the future land use map for this property is low-density residential. That equates to 4.356 units or less per acre. This proposal is for less, 2.22 units per acre. So the planned density fits extremely well in the surrounding neighborhoods. So we're really pleased that by the recommendation of the staff and the planning commission for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next, would anyone else like to make a comment? Would, raise your hand or something. Yes, come on. I saw yours first, Carrie, so I'll take you. Byron, you can be next.
Sorry, I went to the eye doctor today and I can barely see. Carrie Fleming, 204 East Queen Street. I'd just like to ask the council again to consider, if this is approved, that we have a caveat that construction traffic stay outside of the historic overlay area. And any future developments that are approved, that be part of the agreement that the town has with the developer. Because otherwise, all we're going to see is construction traffic taking out all of our old windows and destroying our historic district. I mean, every time they go by, the old glass is just doing this.
So can I ask you a question, Carrie, regarding that?
Sure.
Are there
Are you
other-
allowed to do that?
We'll do questions later.
Just questions later,
If it's
okay?
okay.
All right, you can come up later then, I want to ask you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, I believe we're going to Byron. Mike wants to go next? Okay. Come on up, Mike.
Michael Sharrell, 380 Mikasa Drive. This is regarding the Morton Farm. There are plenty of folks in town who are in favor of development. The development is not a one-size-fits-all issue. With the request to rezone this special land from its earlier intended use, it should cause us all to pause and ask why. For many who live in treasured communities like Pendleton, the desire is to rethink new development as it directly relates to the citizens and their enjoyment and response to it. Parks and green space and trees encourage people to gather. Asphalt streets, not necessarily. Development should go with the grain of the land, not against it. In our land use plan and comp plan, the word character is repeated. But when a new development overshadows the neighborhoods around it with an abundance of rooftops, that is not maintaining character of the surrounding area. In the developer's plan, the majority of the lots are only 50 feet wide to include both the house and a side driveway. There will be 61 of these bunched up against each other. It's not as much about density as it is about arrangement, scale, proportion, and character. A group in town developed a plan that centers the Morton Farm development around a 2-acre green space, similar to the Village Green. It yields 53 lots, mostly 60 feet wide. 20 of those lots would face the park, which would add greater value to each. We can do better than this current plan and would love to work with the developer to achieve that if he's willing. Another concern is very simple. If this is approved with this current layout, what is to stop Ben Shirley from putting in the infrastructure and then flipping it to another developer, one who might not be as willing as Ben is to work with the citizens? In summary, we feel that more citizen input is needed in going forward before allowing yet another potential cookie cutter development to be built on the most precious parcel of land left in the town limits. To another point, there have sadly been false statements and rumors circulating around things that happened with the first developer who had a contract with the Morton family. And in my case personally, regarding the backup contract that I, as a licensed broker, presented to their realtor during that developer's due diligence. The verbiage of the backup contract clearly states that if accepted or negotiated and accepted, it would attach itself to the primary contract, which was the developer's contract, and automatically would be set in place if the primary contract ended. The family had the opportunity and right to counter and negotiate the offer that my buyers presented, but did not. Their realtor did not contact my buyers, as it is rumored, and if he had, it would have been a violation of ethics laws and license law in this state. Had the family negotiated that offer towards acceptance, it would have closed and sold a year ago, and we would not be here today. Thank you.
All right, next, we have Byron.
Byron Edwards, 220 North Broad Street. My comments are a little bit more general in nature and then somewhat related to Morton Farm, but related to bigger issues. I think it's pretty obvious that Pendleton is a target for developers, and controlling the quality of this growth is going to be more and more difficult until and when we can implement a uniform development ordinance. that will help establish a vision or plan for the town. A UDO will create a uniform set of zoning ordinances, codes, and regulations that will help us achieve that vision while still allowing for and encouraging qualitative economic growth. I've been told it will take 2 to 2.5 years to get a uniform development ordinance together. Excuse me. A lot of undesirable developments can happen in those 2+ years. Given the pressures for development on our town, there's been a lot of emotional responses and pent-up frustrations from basically 2 groups. Those that believe individual property rights are sacrosanct, and those that believe zoning is a required planning tool to protect the public interest from uncontrolled and possibly undesirable growth. Unfortunately, it appears we are becoming an us and them community. I hope we can all encourage and learn to agree to disagree without being disagreeable. At last month's town council meeting on September 6th, we had almost 3 hours of open public discussion centered around the Pendleton oil mill issues that was a shining example of how we can disagree without being disagreeable. It was the best town hall meeting I've been to in my 8 years here in Pendleton, and something I hope we could continue to do in the future at all our public meetings. 2 days later, I felt like the goodwill and collaboration was completely undone by the tone and tenor of the Planning Commission meeting. I felt the emotional fervor of that evening was full of anger and was not a two-way dialogue of the issues, which was what we expect from our Planning Commission. Yes, there were dueling petitions, one in favor of approval and those that wanted the Planning Commission to at least consider a list of 12 items. We didn't ask you to vote it down. We said, look at these issues before you approve the proposal. We expected an open and robust dialogue and discussion, not unlike the previous town council meeting. But the commission did not discuss the merits of the 12 items over the 100+ Pendleton citizens asked them to at least consider before voting. This does not represent the best we can be as a community. The issue for me was not that the vote was 7-0, which is fair, but that there was no discussion on the merits of either of the petitions before the vote was conducted. I'm simply asking all of us, myself included, to encourage a healthier public dialogue on difficult issues without being difficult with each other. Thank you.
All right, next, someone else would like to make a comment? Yes, sir, Mr. Ward, come on up.
I am Scott Ward. I reside at 135 Nakasa Drive, and I am presenting the petition of over 200 folks who are in favor of the Morton Farm moving forward. And it's my hope that the petition will show the mayor and council that there is strong support in the community for the rezoning as recommended by the Planning Commission. At this time, I'll read the petition itself. It says, petition for support of the Morton Farm to the town of Pendleton. We, the undersigned petitioners, after due consideration, support the Morton family in their effort to rezone and sell their property as prescribed by the town of Pendleton to be lived on and loved by future generations. As the 28 acres are unviable for commercial agriculture, the 5th, 6th, and 7th generational owners have agreed to sell. The Smith Morton family have called the property home since 1856 and will work to save the 1856 farmhouse. As the property resides in an area of residential lots, mobile home lots, subsidized low-income housing, and the Pendleton Public Works Facility, the development of this land will play a role in revitalization for that side of town. The petitioners therefore support the Morton family with their effort to move forward in this endeavor. End of petition. Further, the petition for the support of the Morton family is simple and straightforward. The signed petitioners promote the approval of the request as it stands and the subsequent sale of the family. First and foremost, it is bringing peace to the Morton family after 2 years. We, the petitioners, are pleased that this request is now before you as a resolution and that it was passed unanimously by the Planning Commission. We, the group of petitioners, 200 of us, agreed with the Planning Commission, and that vote was unanimous, 7-0. And we do not wish to enter into redrawing, revising, having citizens who've not done development before. I've seen the group come before. I've heard the other group. It really turns into no one can come to a consensus. So any scenario of change, we're trusting the town of Pendleton, because that's the way this zoning process will work. Any deemed necessary change will come under your governance, and we trust in that. We hope that the mayor and the town council will accept this resolution for rezoning of the Morton Farm, for the vote this, and allow it to move forward to the November 1st reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
November, okay,
First reading.
October.
No, tonight's
No,
resolution.
October, November, December, okay.
Yeah.
I'm with that. All right.
Do I give you this?
Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone else like to make comments? Lady, yeah, is that strict? Yeah, come on up.
Hi there.
Hey.
I'm Amy Trick. I live at and own 362 East Main Street, and I'm going to change the tone of the room a little bit, and that I'm here to once again discuss the scourge that is the Pendleton oil mill. It has been many months since I first started writing the mayor and town council and attending the monthly council meetings to speak up about all of the hardships that living next to the mill has caused myself and my neighbors. At last meeting, I was told by the town's lawyer and the mill owner's lawyer are talking regularly, but frankly, this is not enough. The mill is still in the same state of complete disarray as it has been last month and the month before, and since December of last year. Continuing talking is not getting anything done. How long is my neighborhood supposed to live in squalor or to have to wait for this problem to be abated? It was very helpful to hear from the town's lawyer directly at the last council meeting. But now that I have had time to reflect on some of his comments and watch the discussion on YouTube again, I have a few rebuttals. Essentially, everything that has been said is reflective of what is the most cost-effective approach for the town, which is understandable. The lawyer is helping you find the most cost-effective way to deal with the mill. However, when something is as big and as flagrant of a safety hazard as the mill is, I think the solution should be to pursue whichever action protects life and property most effectively and expediently, even if it is not the most cost-effective. Can you imagine the stress I felt last weekend when storms descended of Hurricane Ian were projected to run through our region, worrying that the debris that has been sitting in loose piles for the last 10 months would fling into my home? Fortunately, that did not happen, at least not this time. But it is unjust for myself and my neighbors to have to endure such anxiety for months or years to come when it has already been almost a year of living amongst this degradation. Thus, I will once again ask this town council to more authoritatively enforce their ordinances rather than pursuing a potentially long and drawn out negotiation that only maybe results in a cleanup far down the line and inevitably forces East Main Street to continue to dwell in an unsafe and unsanitary mess for an even more extended period of time. Secondly, I have an additional request related to our codes and ordinances. I am still quite horrified at the fact that demolition bonds are not required for local municipal codes. Now that this town has seen just how detrimental the lack of demolition bonds can be from the situation with the Pendleton oil mill, I ask that the town amend its ordinances. Even if it's not a typical requirement within the region or state to have a demolition bond for such projects, I think that Pendleton could lead the way. In many other states, demolition bond requirements are typical, and such legislation prevents situations like that with the oil mill from happening in the first place. Should we not learn from this situation and prevent it from happening again at the oil mill if they ever resume cleanup or at other sites in town? To conclude, my requests are that the town promptly facilitate cleanup through ordinance enforcement of the oil mill rather than pursue drawn-out negotiations. And secondly, that you amend ordinances to prevent anyone in Pendleton from having to endure such a situation again. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else like to make a comment? Yeah, Carl, come on up.
Carl Picorni, 161 East Queen Street. While this plan is not everything I'd hoped for, it is enough progress from what we had before and has less density, more open space. The developer has been very agreeable to work with, as previous speakers have said. I would ask that council do whatever they can, if you vote to approve it, to put constraints on it so that we know we're getting what's stated that we're going to get. But other than that, I support the proposal for the ordinance.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
If it's been changed from when it's submitted. They all have.
Here's what refers
Yeah.
to it.
Okay.
You all have this.
It's complicated.
My name is Anita Church, 330 Sitten Drive. What is the best way to develop the last rolling open property in central Pendleton? It is surrounded by, on 4 sides, by 16 residential properties. And those people have to be considered in the development of this property. The proposed plan for the 61 lots will be graded for flat pads for concrete slab on-grade construction. This results in very steep slopes to meet existing grade. And so you can't see it, but I've done work to analyze the topo and the existing slopes. So in the topography analysis, there are 10 feet drops in elevation between all the contour lines. The high point is Cherry at the entry. The low point is down in the wetland. There you're at 800 feet. The existing slope analysis shows how irregular the site is. These are not long, regular slopes. They're very irregular. The key is on the right. The orange areas, the purple areas, the gray areas are probably 20% slope, maybe more. So it will take a lot of grading to work this area out. The steepest area is from Cherry down to the existing trees. You have a 50-foot drop in 500 lineal feet. How is this going to be done? This will require mass grading, and there will either be one solution is to terrace between the lots. So you'll have a flat pad and then you'll have a terrace, a flat pad and a terrace. Another solution, which I think is probably the one that they want to do, is there will be a big cut along Cherry below the buffer area, assuming the buffer area goes in. And there'll be a steep cut, and then there'll be a big fill area down at the low area. This essentially will level the slopes in that area. Either solution, it will transform this site. This is mass grading. And the best example right now is the Grange, which is the development on Chapman Hill Road, just east of Patrick Square. And you will see what this kind of mass grading is going to look like. It will transform the site. You will not recognize it anymore. And artificial slopes create an artificial site. It will never look like the wonderful rolling hills that we're used to. So what's an alternative? Well, we could go with houses with crawl space. We have this right here in Heritage Oaks where there are crawl spaces. People have access.
I'm sorry, that's it.
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, would anyone else like to make a comment? Yes, sir, come on up.
My name is Tom Church. I live at 330 Sitten Drive. I have said before, and for the people in here who know me, that I'm not opposed to development of the Morton property. It's a question of what is the right fit. And it's been said that there are a lot of people weighing in on this who don't know very much about land development. And I'd like to quickly state that I have many years in the land development culture as a land surveyor, doing grade staking out in the field. I have been an environmental analyst dealing with state environmental laws. I have been a licensed landscape architect. I currently am, and I've been a certified urban planner. Land use planning is a very complicated undertaking. I can say that with some authority, I think. And if we try to answer the question of what is the right fit for this landscape, I would posit that this is not the right answer. And part of the reason is that given the complexity of land use planning, it should not be turned over to a single professional, and especially not a civil engineer, with all due respect to the engineering community. I've worked with a lot of engineers. I have a lot of respect for engineering and the curriculums that lead to degrees in engineering as well as the licensure. But this is something that requires a team. And I think there should be landscape architects, probably natural scientists, at least an arborist, certainly civil engineers, probably architects, that can come up with the best solution for this. Now, some of you may know that I also teach in this area, and I have for over a quarter of a century. And I'm currently teaching this area right now, exactly this area. I will tell you very frankly that if my students came in with a solution like this, I would say not acceptable. I'm sorry to have to say that, but that's the absolute truth. And it's partly because of the expedience you get from a profession like civil engineering. Civil engineers are not really trained to do good land use development. And if I were able to explain why I have issues with this, they're numerous. One of them is that it doesn't adequately respect the natural composition, the environmental composition of the site. It's proposing 3 cul-de-sacs that begin to reflect a layout that, in my experience, is at least a half a century old. In recent years, we have had a movement towards such movements, such endeavors as new urbanism, traditional neighborhood development, smart growth. I don't see anything in this solution right here that reflects what are the contemporary cutting-edge sorts of approaches to land use planning for housing in particular, that an incredible town like Pendleton should be advocating for. And I'm very disappointed to know that this has been recommended by the Planning Commission as well as planning. I'm just dumbfounded, quite honestly.
That's it. Thank you for your comment. Anyone else like to make a comment? Okay, just come on up, Alan.
Hi, I'm Annalyn Watkins. I live at 693 Pinewood Court in Pendleton, and I did not come prepared to make a statement tonight. I don't like to speak in front of people. But there are very few people I respect more than I have been in Helen Morton. And the fact that these 2 beautiful young ladies are trying to do right by taking care of their family and respecting this town needs to be top consideration. These young women have done all they can do. The town has said we support them. And guys, out of respect for this family and for the time that they have spent cultivating and serving and supporting this community, can't we please do the same thing for them? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment? I think I saw, oh yeah, there you go. I thought I saw you earlier. Come on, Ms. Edwards.
Hi. I'm Hilda Anderson at 220 North Broad. And okay. I was asked to kind of paraphrase a letter, but somebody was not able to come tonight. And I agree with, and I understand some of the things they're talking about. First of all, I do want to reemphasize that we, and I don't know the Mortons personally, but we have always heard wonderful things about your family and your property. And we had such high hopes for what that would mean to the town in development and in your ability to sell and profit.
Excuse me, could I interrupt you? Are you reading the letter?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay. I just had a question about that.
Oh, sure. No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just off the cuff right now because of things said earlier.
Don't forget, you
where
got
was
3
I now?
minutes. You got 3 minutes, okay.
Okay. Anyway, so this is from the letter, and it enlightened me. It said that the Planning Commission's recommendation to rezone to flexible review district to accept developers' intended development is proposed. Does not mean there are two separate entities. Changing the zoning from agriculture to FRD is one matter. The other is how the developer's plans are accepted. And that is my main concern. I was at the meetings with Mr. Shirley and some of them, not all of them. And I understand that you really worked with the town. My concern, sorry, but you're the developer, you're not the builder. You don't have builders in line yet. We have no idea what that's going to be like. And that is a big question to me. Also, from what I understand, the HOA application is supposed to be given to the town at this point or soon after as to what the general plan is for the community once built, once planned, once occupied. This is, you know, if it was a developer builder and we knew exactly what was going to happen, fine. We don't. There is a huge question mark. And that is something that I hope the town council will address as the process continues. Questions answered and so forth. And loyalty between the town officials and townspeople is paramount. Developers should be third in line with consideration. That's kind of tough, but that is kind of how it should be, I think, planned. Is, you know, you have to have a system, and believe me, and I'm probably going over, y'all, this is not going to be the last time. There's a lot going on in
That's
Pendleton.
it. Thank you. We appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
All right. Next, do we have someone else like to make a comment? Looks like Tom's coming up here.
Thomas Shirley, 111 North Elm Street. First off, the Morton project, I ask you to vote no for. There's a better plan out there. There's got to be. This is 61 homes. We already have trouble picking up limbs and debris on the roads. How are we going to add more? I ask you to vote no for that. There is a better way. There's something out there we can come up with collectively that benefits the Mortons, that benefits the town, that benefits Ben, everybody. But this clearly isn't, because there's 200 signatures out there, but I see the Mortons and Mr. Ward here that's going for it. Where I've seen more concerned citizens saying, please don't do this yet. That's my concern with that. With the oil mill, this will turn into the oil mill. This Morton stuff will become the oil mill as well, and we will have more slab-built homes down there, or crawl space, or semi-custom. We can do something better. Thank you.
Thanks for comment. Anyone else like to make a comment? Yes, ma'am. Come on.
I didn't come up here to make a statement tonight. I'm Michelle Hewitt. We just moved here to 103 Hillendale Road. We are opposing any new development. I was just informed, I had a stroke last year, so I was just informed of all of this new development. We would have not bought in the town of Pendleton had we known that it was going to grow so fast, that the water systems, has all that been taken into consideration. I'm with a guy that had a gray shirt on that was the teacher. I think it needs to be more than one person doing that. I work for South Carolina Department of Transportation. I was an engineering geodetic tech. I can tell you that the drainage runoff, the curbside, however they're gonna do it, sidewalks, all of that makes a difference when you're putting in a subdivision. It's gonna weigh on our wastewater system. And as the gentleman just stated, Mr. Shirley before me, we can't even get our limbs picked up on the side of the road. I've had limbs out there for 8 months, sitting on the side of the road that have not been picked up. So where is the money going, the tax money going that we pay for stuff like that? Is it gonna go to the new subdivision? Where's the money gonna be allotted? I would recommend voting no, and allowing more time for the other citizens that were unaware of this, such as I moved from one side of Anderson County to the other, thinking that we were moving into a smaller area, and come to find out there's like, almost 1,000 more homes coming. I recommend, highly recommend that you vote no, because there will be a lot of retirees that do not want, not that we do not want new families to grow up here, not that. The fact that we moved here to retire, not to move again. We will seldom move again. Should all of this start taking place, the traffic on Highway 76 is so ridiculous. I have put in a FOIA request to the Department of Transportation, to the state, to find out exactly how many accidents have been between Tri-County Tech and Sandy Springs since the 8 months we've been here, because I've passed, I know, at least 20. So when you add more of these houses and more people and more congestion, you either need to slow the speed limit down, work on doing something like that to save for the safety of people that drive up and down that road. Because personally, it's very dangerous. So when you add all of this other traffic, all of these other houses, you figure there's at least 2 people gonna live in each one of those houses. So 2 times, I think 61. Okay, there's 120 more people driving. And then you add the other subdivisions that are set up to be, come next. And I'm sorry if I'm tongue-tied. Again, I had a stroke. I think you should give the towns, the people that are just now getting involved in this, that have moved here, and planning on retiring here, time to get another petition up.
That's it. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Come on up.
I'm Tommy Brock. I got property at Crenshaw. This property's been for sale for several years now. All y'all got good ideas about what to do with it. It's been for sale. Buy it. These people have a right to sell their property. They have a right of their own to do it. I vote you say yes, because you voting no is hurting this family from selling a piece of property that they no longer need. And you know, that's kind of a dictatorship, is to say, you know, we don't live in Russia, we live in the United States. You know, they got the right to do what they need to do with their property. So I vote you say yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next, anybody else? Okay, going once, going twice. So we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Okay, next we got some reports. First, which will be the police department report. We have Chief Crosby here to give that to us.
I always get the short end of the stick by going right after public comments, so I'll try to make this brief.
You do, Robert.
So we continue to be busy. Over 370 calls for service this month since September 1st. Reports were kind of down, as you guys can see in your numbers in front of you, 14 reports. We have cleared 2 of those. Issued some warning tickets, issued some citations, but on to the bigger and better things. So we did have a critical incident on the 18th of September. The deputies, the sheriff's officers responded to 120 History Lane at the old Oak Barn for a shooting. There was 2 vehicles that were struck by gunfire. We located several spent rounds of ammunition, and we don't have any, as you can see in your report, we don't have any suspects, but myself and Officer Elder are continuing to work on that. We've been interviewing as many people we've been able to identify that were involved in the participation as well as the setting up of the party, which leads into the next bullet point. So we've been working with the sheriff's office, and now we've had to bring in SLED on it to help with some of our intelligence on this. We've noticed an uptick in parties that are just happening right outside of town limits and or at the Oak Barn that we had no clue that was happening out there. They're being put on, especially now that school's back in, by a couple of different organizations within Clemson University that are party promoters. We've also spoken to Clemson University Police. We were over there last week conducting an interview with one of the students who was involved. So we are trying our best to shut these down before they happen, and so we do not have another incident like at the Oak Barn. That being said, it's not like the Oak Barn is not safe or anything else. This is a one-off occurrence, and that's why it's highly effective that we do interact with Clemson University, SLED, and the sheriff's office to try to make sure these do not happen any further. So that was our main takeaway for September. Upcoming, and for everybody in the audience, I have put out my Shop with a Cop flyers. And for those that do not know anything about that, the Shop with a Cop is the police department's program to help underprivileged children in this community that are residents of Pendleton to have a good Christmas. Last year, we were able to help over 20 children to have Christmas that they would not have had. We've already identified several this year so far, and we're hoping that everybody will take a flyer and please scan the QR code and submit some money to the cause. I think it's a good program that we have. This is our second year of doing it, and I hope to continue to make it bigger and bigger. Just a reminder, we have Fall Festival and road closures will be coming up, which will directly impact the town Friday and Saturday, as well as the Pendleton High School Homecoming Parade. And we will have to shut down a few roads and we'll open them up as quickly as possible on Wednesday for the high school homecoming parade. Other than that, I don't have anything else. If anybody has any questions for me.
Any good questions?
Well, I do, Chief.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
First of all, and I hate to admit this, but I've been pretty preoccupied with the Morton Farm situation. So I saw you earlier today, and I forgot to ask you. I hate to admit this, but where's 120 History Lane in the old?
The Oak Barn is directly across the street from Tri-County.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's right.
Woodburn Place,
That's in Pendleton.
Woodburn.
That's in Pendleton property.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
It's part of the South Carolina agriculture.
Okay. I'm sorry for not knowing
No,
that.
you're fine.
I wanted to look that up before I had a chance.
Well, we very rarely, I couldn't tell you the last time we got a call for service out there for even an alarm call. So, I mean, it's very rare we go over there.
Okay.
Jordan runs a great team, and we never have any issues.
I haven't had a chance to talk to staff about our upcoming Fall Festival. I'm going to put you on the spot.
It's okay.
What about parking for Fall Festival? I'm concerned about parking for Fall Festival. Have we had a chance to?
Well, we've covered with the parking. I mean, I don't have I wish I could throw a map up. Parking's going to be down Broad Street. There's obviously plenty of parking here at Town Hall. We will have a shuttle service that Amber and her staff have the golf carts that they got. That you've got the parking lot, you got the field, and her team will be shuttling people back and forth. So you don't even have to walk. And if you're need some handicap accessible or anything like that, Amber and her staff will have a phone number that you can call so they can come pick you up.
All right, thank you for that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I failed to ask you those questions earlier today when we spoke.
It's fine.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep, absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right, next we have the Planning and Zoning Department report. We have Dave Paulson here to give us that report.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. It's been another exciting month in planning. We are starting to see some of our permits actually start to slow down a little bit. I'm not sure, it just happening to be that way. We issued 17 permits in the month of September. 11 of those were new home permits. We did issue one demo permit. That was for the house that caught fire at the intersection of Cherry Street and Buchanan. That house has been removed by the owner. We issued a new fence permit, new decking permit, and 3 other permits, which included gas lines, or new gas lines, new generators, and concrete pads. Town planning staff helped a group that has submitted plans that are wanting to develop the approximately 80 acres with the rear of the Village of Town Creek Apartments. We're helping them and working with them to finalize that. The plan is scheduled to be presented to the Planning Commission this month on October the 13th. We're also having a public hearing on that at that time. Staff assisted the Planning Commission with their regular meeting and public hearing on September the 8th, 2022. The commission took for consideration the request for Morton Farm. Staff also worked with 3 separate developers who submitted plans to build houses on infill lots. Shortly after we ended the moratorium on infill lot development, we received several new permits. We're working through with the new developers on the stormwater management that we've implemented and the new design standards that we came up with. So that's really actually working out very well. And we've got several infill lots on Lebanon Road, Thompson Street, and Colonial Court where they're building new homes. Planning Department assisted the Design Review Board with a call meeting on September the 15th. This was a meeting where an applicant asked and was granted permission to do a mural on the side of 102 East Main Street. That's the Green Heart Awakening building. It's going to be a pretty neat design. Planning staff also met with a builder who's interested in potentially building a small commercial 3 to 4 bay building on 3.3 acres of land right off Highway 76 in front of the Hillendale Road area. He's just in the talks of that now. There's no plans been submitted. He's just trying to find out if it can be done. So we're working with him. Code enforcement issued several tall grass complaints in the town. We'll be following up with the owners on the progress of correcting these violations the next coming month. I know a couple of them that we sent out have already taken care of the grass. Some of the upcoming meetings, we have one coming up on October 13th, which is the Planning Commission. Again, we'll have a public hearing there for the proposed development for the 80 acres behind the Village of Town Creek. And that's all I have right now. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer.
No? Good. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, David.
All right, moving on, we have the administrator's report next. Steve Miller.
Unfortunately, this month, we don't have any financial information because our Amy is celebrating her nuptials. And I'm sure that'll be the first thing she gets on when she gets back from her honeymoon. So I'd like to congratulate her. But for August, we had 300 work orders that were entered. We completed 317. We completed some that we had left over from months prior. Some general information. We're finally fully staffed back at Public Works. Manpower finally located us in the last labor position. We're working with them right now to see if he's going to fill into a full-time position. For everybody in here, I'm sure leaf season is here. We expected it to start off with a big bang because of the hurricane. But thankfully, the hurricane didn't affect us that much other than give us a great weekend and a Clemson Tiger win. So we want to remind everybody of a couple of things with leaf season. Number one, do not mix sticks in with the leaves. Our equipment cannot pick it up. It damages the equipment when there's sticks or anything else inside of it. If there's debris other than leaves in the pile, it's going to get red tagged and it'll have to be separated for us to pick it up. Just for everybody's clarifications, we pick leaves up by the day of the route that your trash is picked up. But since it takes so much longer to pick up leaves, for instance, if your trash is picked up on a Monday, which happens to be our biggest leaf route because it's the oldest section of town, it may take us a week or two to pick up all the leaves on that route. If you are picked up on Tuesday, as soon as we're done with Monday's route, we'll go to Tuesday's route. It may take us a month or a month and a half to get through the town to complete one full circuit. We will not go back to pick anybody up. If your leaves are not out there, you'll just be picked up on the next circuit through town. If it rains, the leaves become heavy. You can't get them into the truck. You can't dump them out of the truck. We can't get into the fields that we have to dump. So the leaves will have to sit there. Fridays, we reserve for very big leaf piles, things that we actually have to send multiple people out in order to get up, to work the truck to get it up. There are several places in town that we know where this becomes an issue, and we basically have to schedule it around. If you see the leaf truck go down your street and they pick up one side and you get scared they're not coming back, it's probably full. We have to go empty it. They'll be back the next day as soon as we're running leaves again to pick up your side. We do know where we're at on the route in order to get it picked up. Leaf season does impact brush. You know, it's the same crew that runs brush as the same crew that runs leaves. So, you know, we have to manage that and we have to break that up in order to run brush and leaves at one time. As always with recycling, please remember recycling is getting more strict. We can't take everything. They're sending a lot of the recycling to the landfill because it's contaminated. If you receive a flyer on your recycling can, it's because you have something in there that we can't pick up and mix in for our recycling because it will contaminate the whole truck. Please call us if you have any questions. We'll tell you what those are. The flyers will tell you what they are so that you can recycle whatever waste you can recycle at this point. The bridge at Trotter's Trail, we have got the footers dug and poured. The framing should start, I believe, this week on Trotter's Trail to replace the bridge that got crushed by a tree. Finally, our new flail mower we ordered last year is finally in, which is an attachment to our tractor to cut right-of-ways. We had it installed on our tractor. We're actually having to get some counterweights to put on the front and the side of the tractor so the tractor doesn't tip over. So as soon as we get those counterweights in and installed, we'll actually be able to have the tractor out there running around. We're still using the contractors to trim some roads out of the extra $50,000 that council gave us in the budget for the street department. So that's still being done. The Magnolia Point pump station has been completely repaired. The high tide unit, I believe, went in today, which the high tide unit is our SCADA system that we communicate with the pumps so we can see when the pumps are running and what the wet well's doing. But that is completely done. The bypass pump has been removed. So that station is basically a brand new station. We also have 2 openings for police officers. I know we're taking resumes for. If anybody knows anybody in law enforcement, please send them our way. We prefer that they already be certified, but we are looking at uncertified candidates if they meet our qualifications. The Pendleton Clemson wastewater treatment plant expansion, as you know, we're in a joint venture with Pendleton, Clemson, and Anderson County to expand the waste treatment plant. We submitted our grant to RIA, which is handling the ARPA funds, asked for $20 million on that expansion. GMC has developed a draft. We're going to use a construction manager at risk form and hopefully bring in a contractor early on in the design in order to reduce the cost of the future plant costs. And we have chosen the type of plant. We were going to go with oxidation ditches. We're going to go with a very similar process that came in at $1 million cheaper. So hopefully that we can get that construction manager at risk bid out this month and be bringing that back for all 3 of the council's approvals in the months coming. Council has the West End revitalization plan in front of y'all for acceptance tonight. We have gone ahead and put in for the CDBG for this funding cycle. We've already gone through the first phase and been approved for the first phase. We have received a letter back that we can spend up to 10% on engineering at this point. I take that as a good sign. So hopefully we'll get some money granted out of this grant cycle for CDBG. West Queen Street, we do have that ARC grant that we're working on. We have a meeting October 6th this week at 6 p.m. at the Pendleton Community Center. Our engineers will be there with basically the 90% plans for everybody to look at and make any final comments. We plan on, after this meeting, correcting anything, and it should be going out to bid this month. I have kind of been asked about the time frame on it. You know, after this meeting, if we get the bid out October 15th, you have a 30-day bid that puts you in November 15th. We'll need to analyze the bids and make sure they're in there. It looks like the bids would come to council in December or January of 2023. Once council accepts the bids, it has to go to Commerce. Commerce has, I believe, 90 to 120 days to approve them. Once they approve them, we can sign off and sign a contract to contractor at that point with all the bid documents and pricing, lump sum pricing. And then the contractor will probably be given a 30 to 45-day mobilization period in order to start. So you're looking, the soonest you're looking at construction is probably May of 2023. We're still waiting on Duke Energy. We have elected to go to Duke Energy for the street lighting because it is, we installed our own street lighting on we installed our own street lighting on Exchange and Mechanic. Just the price of everything right now, it's way cheaper to use Duke and pay the upfront cost for decorative to Duke and then just pay the monthly fee back to Duke to have the lights. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference at this point.
Okay. Anybody got any questions of Steve?
Steve, Trotter Trail, you're talking Veterans Park, right? I just want to
Veterans
make
Park, yeah.
absolutely certain that everyone understands that,
Yep.
the bridge on Trotter Trail is out.
Yep.
And what kind of time frame are we looking at, maybe possibly getting that?
I mean, I hope he has the bridge repaired in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because we have other stuff that needs to be repaired at
And
Barry's
we,
place.
and we also took some trees down there recently and some dead wood and all that too.
Yep.
So we're maintaining
Yeah.
that aspect of the park.
Kent, y'all gave us approximately, I believe it's about $36,000 to maintain the park.
Okay.
So that's what all that's coming out of.
And that bridge was.
Well, that was
the fall of
unexpected.
a-
We
of a
didn't.
storm and a
Yeah.
tree falling down, right?
Yeah, we didn't expect to be spending that money on the bridge. We
Right.
expected it to be on Barry's place, but.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Anybody else?
Are there any updates on the oil mill?
What I can, what I can say is we have met with their attorney, and we have been advised of what they have issues with as far as ongoing litigation settlements. They are talking to the other litigant and trying to get the ability to be a single negotiator with the town. And so that is what we're trying to do right now.
Thanks.
Okay. Any more questions, anybody? Okay. All right, moving on, we're going to go to some action items. First is consideration of a resolution accepting a recommendation from Pendleton Planning Commission to rezone 540 East Main Street, and that's rezoning from agricultural forest to flexible review district. So background on this for anybody that doesn't know, on May 26, 2022, Ben Shirley, applicant and property developer, met with the town Pendleton Planning Department in reference to 540 East Main Street, the Morton Farm, as we know it. He informed the town that he was seeking to rezone this 27.9 acre property and construct single-family homes on it. On June 23rd, 2022, Mr. Shirley submitted preliminary plans for subdividing this land along with the preliminary design ideas. And I think it's probably worth mentioning now, as I was enlightened to this earlier today, that I guess according to the flexible review ordinance, this is really called a concept plan in there. So what I want to mention, I guess, is this is not the final plan. This shall constitute authority for the applicant to prepare the final development plan. And Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but as I understand it, this plan would still get reviewed by DHEC, and it would have to undergo scrutiny as to what, I guess, stormwater management and et cetera. So there could be other changes made in this plan, and there is, of course, we also have a first and second reading afterward. So there is a process by which this plan can change before final acceptance, if it's accepted. So I just wanted to mention that. But this is a preliminary design idea for the construction of 60 new single-family homes. The Pendleton Planning Department and other staff members conducted a staff-level review on this plan and submitted several design suggestions to the developer as required per our land development regulations. On August 15, 2022, town staff posted the property with a public hearing, notice signage, and ran a legal ad in the Anderson Independent Mail notifying the public of a scheduled public hearing for September 8, 2022 with the Planning Commission. Staff also mailed 16 adjacent property owners letters informing them of this upcoming public hearing. And on September 1st, 2022, the developer submitted final development plans that included a request to rezone this property from AF to flexible review district, along with a statement of intent for this development. This is the plan that was submitted to Planning Commission for public hearing. This plan shows a subdivision of 61 single-family lots, and I believe that includes the existing home, with a density of 2.17 units per acreage. This plan also contains 9.27 acres of open green space, including walking trails. And I got one up a little bit to cover here. On September 8th, the Pendleton Planning Commission held its regular meeting and conducted a public hearing on this rezoning request and major subdivision. At this meeting, several residents spoke both in favor and against the development of the property. A petition was submitted to the Planning Commission during public comment that contained 104 names opposing the development and asked the Planning Commission to deny this request. Another petition was submitted to the Planning Commission, contained 188 signatures in favor of the development, asking the Planning Commission to approve this development. After discussion by the Planning Commission, a motion was made to approve the recommendation to rezone this property, which received a unanimous vote from all members. So the recommended action is to approve the resolution to accept the recommendation from the Planning Commission for rezoning to 540 East Main Street from Agriculture Forest AF to Flexible Review District and accept the statement of intent for the Flexible Review District and other matters related thereto. Having said all that, I think before we really move into discussion here, I would like to ask the developer, Mr. Shirley, do you have anything you would like to say about the development? Is there anything you want to say at this time before we get started?
Sure.
Okay, then feel free to come up.
Should I state my name? Ben Shirley, Somerset Capital. I know that a lot of people in here have a lot of mixed feelings on this property. I understand. We certainly didn't do what we did or come up with this plan lightly. We tried to consider everything from the last plan that everybody was against, and it seemed like it was a very unified voice against the last plan. By creating what we've created, yes, there will be some grading involved, but that's in all real estate development. But we've created a great mix of lot sizes, products that allows the builder that we ultimately partner with. Although the three we have in mind, none of them will commit to us because of what happened last time. So I can't sit here and tell you guys what builder will be coming in here. And I understand their hesitancy. So we feel that we will give the builder a great flexibility of bringing different sizes, different types of houses all along and throughout. I know that we have contacted several landscape architects for designing all of the sort of open areas. Almost every intersection will have a landscape feature at it, decorative lighting, tree selection, alternating up and down the streets on all three, the main thoroughfare and the three side cul-de-sacs. We will create what Pendleton has today, double loaded sidewalks with canopy trees. I know that short term, it won't be pretty, but long term, it'll be beautiful. And we just really hope that you guys give us the opportunity to create a tremendous asset here in town of Pendleton. So,
Okay, thank you.
open to answering any of you guys' questions. If you want me to step here, sit down.
You sit there, I think that's fine. If anybody has a question, if you're there, that'll be good. So we may have some, council may have some. With that, I think from the town side, Dave's here. Dave, would you like to kind of go over the whole thing?
Sure, I'll take just a quick couple seconds to try and paint you a small picture of, what we do and how we got here and what's all involved in this plan. So like you said tonight, you guys have consideration, the recommendation from the Planning Commission to rezone 540 East Main Street from agricultural forest to a flexible review district and to approve the statement of intent that goes along with this development. As you said earlier, Mr. Mayor, this property includes 28.18 acres. They're creating 60 new lots, or 61 total lots, but there'll be 60 new lots because the 61 includes the old house that's on there now. The plan also shows it's got 9.27 acres of open green space. The lots on these property will range from 6,500 square feet to 20,000 square feet. And the way that's kind of dictated on the map is everything kind of to the upper left-hand side is the 20,000 square foot lots, which is be more like an estate side, allows for larger homes. And on your 6,500 square foot lots, more of a cottage style house that's, a little bit different than the estate side. Inside your packet, you also have the statement of intent. And what the statement of intent does is that lays out the plan for the development of the property. And inside that plan, when we get these the preliminary plots and plans, the first thing we do with staff is we do a staff level review. We make sure that the plot and plan that are submitted to the town actually is in line with our land development regulations. Once we go through that, that's when we come up with the recommendations of having sidewalks on both sides, street trees, lot trees, and street lighting, and all the things that are dictated in our land development regulation. If you look in this map here, you see that we have actually established that there are sidewalks on both sides of the street. Our land development regulation requires that you have two ways in and out of the neighborhood. And that's depicted, one on Cherry Street, one on Calhoun Boulevard. The developer has put buffer areas around the entire property. As you see, there's a 25-foot buffer on one side, a 50-foot buffer on the front. I think it's a 30 on the other side. So it lays out the buffer zones that's required in our LDR. You also see in this, you see the green space as far as the wetlands area where the trees are, where the stormwater management pond is. All of those things are kind of laid out. The stormwater management and the drainage is all maintained and laid out by DHEC. They have to get approval for that for the stormwater ponds. Some of the other things that are interesting in this development, that we'll have the raised intersections in the on the long straightaway there to help out with speeding. You'll see that there is a 20-foot connecting pathway that kind of goes from that main entranceway into East Main Street. That's a 20-foot pathway that's been the developer has committed to installing. You'll also see other pathways that are kind of intermingle throughout the project and go through the wetlands area and connects one side to the other. The developers also proposed a pavilion with a fire pit as an amenity area, and the front of the property's got a 50-foot right-of-way and a 50-foot setback. And the developer has shown that they're going to put a black wrought iron fence, 4 foot tall, nice landscaping out front. Once we get all of these things that they have submitted and is in line with our land development regulation, we are required to submit that to the Planning Commission for approval, which we submitted that in September. The plan was taken up for consideration at September 8th Planning Commission meeting. We had a public hearing on that, had a lot of input again, as we have tonight, we had at that meeting. And at that meeting, the Planning Commission recommended town council to rezone that property. Rezoning that property is going to allow that. What this plan does and what you're considering tonight is the actual subdivision of the land. And you're going to basically, if it's approved, or what you're considering is the density that's on the lot, the way it's set up. This plan can change a little bit. The roads can maybe move a little bit. There's a couple things that we have what's called minor changes and major changes. Major changes cannot be made by staff level. Major changes have to go back through the Planning Commission. Anything that's a major change would be like a renaming of the development. An increase in density, all those things cannot be handled by staff. That all has to go back through. Anything that's a minor change is a decrease in density, a change in signage or landscaping and stuff like that. That can all be handled at staff level. So those are some of the things. This is the preliminary plat and plan. So these are the things that have been submitted. There are things that could change in the future, but this is what you guys have been presented for you tonight. The street lighting and all of that, the decorative lighting is going to be presented by Duke Energy. All of the amenities and the trails and everything inside there will be all managed by an HOA, and they'll be able to handle all of that and make sure that it stays in top condition. And I know that was fast. I just wanted to kind of give you just a quick overview. If you have any questions, I'll try and answer you. Mr. Shirley's here. If you have any other questions, I'll be glad to try and answer.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate that. Now, with that, I'm going to open it up to council. If any county council has questions about it or anything they want to ask, feel free.
Well, I guess I'll start off with a couple questions. That pathway off of Main Street, I want to be sure that that is wide enough, to handle pedestrian and bicycle. I mean, this is my thought process. Okay, it doesn't have to be, but I'm just concerned about the long-term maintenance of the connectivity, from our downtown area to this area. I think that's important from what I've talked to my constituents about. So I want to make sure that starting out, two things I have in mind, that we concentrate, some effort on making sure that's something that is, going to handle the long term, not just a trail, not just like a little mulch trail there. nicely, maybe concrete or asphalt and landscape. And then I have concerns about the traffic, a cut through, through the subdivision and traffic calming. I'd like to make sure that if, at the very least, I know we talked about raised intersections, but make sure we add some stop signs in there, at least a couple of those intersections there. I've got other things that we talked about, but now we're getting into minor and major. So I don't want to go there. This is a first reading. This is a resolution. I'd be willing to, move forward on this, with all that said, but, with some of those recommendations.
Very good. Anyone else? Got anything they'd like to say or ask?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
This lot is right here at the corner of Main Street.
The only one coming off East Main?
So that's where the access, that's what's one of.
Yes, ma'am. There'd be one lot, one new additional lot that would access off of East Main.
And I think I heard David say there's gonna be raised, intersections.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's just gonna be the platform style.
Yeah, so the first cul-de-sac to the right and then the last cul-de-sac would both have a raised intersection at, so you come up, flatten out, and then it would go back down as you cross this.
So just 2 of the 3 will have.
Yeah, because there's only like 110 feet between the first one and the second one. And then you only have 9 houses coming up from the other side.
You must not have teenagers.
Well, coming from that cul-de-sac, there'd be a stop sign for the people coming down towards the new main road. But yeah, I mean, if you, to go up and down in 100 feet, I don't know. Not saying it's not, I'm not saying we won't.
All right, and so
But that's the plan for now, was just the 2.
So the walkway, as it goes around what I guess was this floodplain or where the pond was at one time, do those access out onto the road as well?
Yes, they would connect back to,
Is that Calhoun?
Calhoun,
They
yes.
come out onto Calhoun?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any wayfinding and stuff for these trails? Like if you're coming down East Main Street and you get to the end of it, just like you'd have an entrance to the neighborhood off the road in a vehicle, is there going to be something that kind of says this is this area, here's all the other green spaces, and that kind of communicates to the public that the intent of the neighborhood is not just a vehicle-centered experience of the neighborhood?
Do you mean like I guess, for lack of better words, like you see in a park, that would have like a big monumental type sign or layout?
Not a huge thing, but just like if you've seen any of the Green Crescent Trail in Clemson, they'll have occasionally a sign. Some of theirs are more like a kiosk, but I don't think it would have to be that big. Something with some landscaping that just offers an entrance.
Have we thought at that point?
Yeah.
We have not. But adding a monument to where it's, I mean, I think it'll be pretty obvious where the landscape, sort of the pathway is, because it will be separate from the existing driveway. You would certainly know that it's separate from private property.
Mm-hmm. I'm just like, my big thing's overarching, and I don't mean to just address this to you, but I think the way I would frame the decision that is at the council is to say, are we expanding the downtown core of Pendleton all the way through, not just this, but beyond this is a proposed new TIF district. And aside from all the work that's gone into this, I do think that there's an argument for, we've already budgeted for initiating a UDO process. We already have proposed small area plan within the TIF district that's right behind here. We also have the oil mill, which is a huge need to figure out what's going on with it. Coming on into downtown, we have proposed small area plan for East Main Street. We have proposed parking improvements for downtown. We've got, if you cross Mechanic Street, we're also going to talk tonight about streetscaping and a revitalization plan. What I'm getting at is that there's an entire east-west corridor of town that is attractive to development. And I think what we have to decide is, are we going to take that east-west thing in little chunks? Or are we as a council going to look at that as an area plan and get the sidewalks, the connectivity, the lighting, the green spaces, all up and down there, and get that in our ordinances as a big project? You know, I think this is pretty good for a neighborhood, but my concern is we've got a crazy quilt all in a line of things that are all coming up at once. Is this the time to actually prioritize making all those spaces make sense? And in between are some of our most valuable historic areas. And right now, there's nothing except for R1 or R2 that's designating them as anything. We could designate these spaces and put it in there. You know, in that scenario, I think it would make sense to delay an approval of zoning, knowing that we would be entering into a large area plan that would incorporate this space on into the TIF district, the oil mill, the historic area, downtown, and on into the west side, to make it all make sense and get everything we want in there.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, that's been my dilemma for the last year and a half, and now hot most in the last week and a half. I've had a chance to, talk to a lot of the constituents here, both plus and, pro and con. And I've talked to Vince extensively. I'm of the mindset that this is the cornerstone. It's a cornerstone now, or it's a cornerstone 3 years from now, if it's going to take that long to get everything that Vince. I am truly passionate about doing everything that Vince has described. I'm just afraid that it's going to take too long. And I'm ready to say to our developer, this is the cornerstone. If you're going to partner with us, we're ready to partner with you. I'm ready to partner with you. I don't know what the rest of my folks are going to say, but I'm ready to partner with you.
I guess my question is, like, all these flexible reviews are not the same, and it makes a whole lot of difference. For me, the reason why I would be pushing for a small area plan is that we're out of the handshake business at that point. It's all in the ordinances. It's cut and dry. Everybody that steps up to the plate knows what they've got to do to build these areas, these several areas in this corridor. Everybody knows what it takes to do it right. And outside of that, we're being put in the position of a handshake deal, even with the flexible review. And, I guess in the past, there have been times when we come back to look at the neighborhood later, and the attitude from the developer is a lot like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. When in the beginning of it, there. And I understand there's a bottom line, but I'm just saying to assuage a lot of these concerns that are about connectivity, we want Pendleton to be walkable, accessible, a diverse and enjoyable place. What we're dealing with right now, nothing against you, but we're dealing with some bad developers in South Carolina that are pillaging these small towns and turning them into generic sprawl. And this one is this is inside the village gate. And if it's going to go bad, then we've let the sprawl into the core. And if it's going to go good, then I guess we got nothing to worry about.
That's a good way to put it. I like that.
Having said what council members have said, and I've listened and I've been quiet, and my heart tells me that it's now time to move forward. And I would like to propose a motion that the resolution that the planning commission submitted, we take a vote on it.
Did you have something?
I had another question.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's fine. Go up with your question.
So you mentioned some problems with builders, but the pictures that you included are we assured of getting that
So this
quality
is-
or?
So the last developer had a builder, one particular builder who, I guess he was going to give a contract to. So they had actual elevations from that builder. Since I don't have that, I can't give you exact, but I gave you guidelines that we're gonna require. And then we, for town's protection, before that builder could get a building permit, he would have to submit the plans, and then staff would have to say, yes, this fits into what the developer committed to for architectural style, color, materials, everything that's in the statement of intent before issuing the building permit. But we would also come back, and I think I told the town this, once we do have the right builder, we would filter through all their plans and make sure, as just the controller of the HOA's covenants and the review committee, architectural review committee, that they meet what we intended, and then we could obviously bring them back to staff and say, look, make sure this meets what you thought we were giving you as well. Most builders in a typical subdivision like this, there might be 20 to 25 different elevations and sizes, because you have a lot of different size lots. That then, as they start building out, people might want the smaller plan, people might want the bigger plan, people might want in between. But from an exterior perspective, it would meet what we wrote in our statement of intent.
All right.
And hopefully fit pictures of example building styles that we want to bring to the subdivision.
So in the definition, it says the FRD enables tools to required to encourage exceptional planning and design. And I guess one of my concerns about that is that the fire pit and pavilion are at one end of the property. Can you tell me what went into that thought process and why it's there?
So we put it there because that's where majority of open space, and it's hard to see it for all of the weeds and junk that's in and around that wetlands area as it sits today. But our plan is to go in there and get rid of all of the ugly invasive species of plants, bring it back to pasture, and allow the old growth trees that are existing today to be a nice open amenity area, so it'll almost feel like a pasture with big trees. Probably what it did 5 or 10 years ago, I would imagine, when Mr. Walsh was still keeping it up. So under shade trees, where the biggest area for community gathering could happen almost to us, made more sense than to stick it in a different corner of the neighborhood. But to say that that's set in stone, I mean, yeah, we could move it, but I don't know that necessarily bringing it up to the front would make a whole lot of sense either. Behind someone else's property, we felt, it needed to stay behind the existing community residence area.
Well, I can appreciate both of that concept, but, so my other issue, I guess, or one of my other issues is the one large lot that's gonna have the back of all of those houses, I know you had talked about some.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Right there off of the first cul-de-sac.
I think coming in off of Main, that's what you're
Where
saying.
you've got the 4 or 5 lots there that are gonna have all of their back into that first lot that's, I guess, coming off of the cul-de-sac. You see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that one?
Right there.
Just tell me that one coming out from there.
That's
what
These 4 lots that
Oh,
go back
I'm
up to
wrong.
this one lot, so that
Yeah.
house is gonna look in the back of everybody's homes, or those 4
So
homes.
we will probably come in with a landscape feature here to sort of designate the estate entrance, and then most certainly would create a landscape buffer off the side of that to sort of give them privacy.
And so, less likely that those are gonna be rear access carports or garages back there, or it is
For these
those
4 here.
Uh-huh, or more likely, or
So
I guess it could be.
maybe detached. In the smaller lot, we don't anticipate they necessarily having to have one. But if they did, it would most likely be detached and rear loaded. So
You don't anticipate them needing a garage at all?
being required to have it at all.
Okay.
So there are a lot of houses that exist in Pendleton today that don't have garages, and so our intent was to sort of mix and match what exists today with new construction, but not necessarily require all of our builders to come in and put a bunch of front-loaded built into the house where you just driving by and seeing a bunch of garages and 2 parking pad wide driveways.
I appreciate
It
that.
allows a lot of flexibility by, if you allow them to build a small single-car garage detached in the back, or allow them to pull around to the back and park sort of perpendicular to the back of the house.
All right. One other question, David, if you can tell me, this minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet, and if we were just looking at residential density, that would be medium density?
So R1 is our lowest density, and that's what we have in our ordinances. That is a 20,000 square foot lot that gives you a density of 2.178 units per acre. Our R2 is 10,000 square foot, which gives us 4.356 acres. Our 6,000 is going to be in your R4 area, but that's the flexibility of the FRD.
All right.
I have another question regarding HOA. I don't know where we're at in the process, but there's been a lot of talk about making, connectivity. And of course, we've all talked about, the other plans for properties behind this property. And then, of course, even moving further west, towards down Main Street and Oil Mill and all that. So do I have public access to just the streets and the sidewalks and, or, can I go on those trails if I'm living on Mikasa and I want to take a walk?
You would need to either be a landowner to access the trails or be an invited guest.
Okay.
That's an area that is for the residents that own a home in the community and their invited guests.
Okay, are there any common trails, or can we as a town access certain trails to make more connectivity aside from using the roadway and the sidewalks?
So Steve and I talked about that at length, and I'm not opposed to it, but I would certainly need to see some progress just given what exists off of Calvin today before I would ever allow that to sort of open up short term.
So are these things we can talk about before the next reading and the final reading, or where are we at with this?
I mean, so at any point in time, the HOA would own and maintain that land. Me as the developer, until I lose control, which I think in South Carolina was 90% of the lots are sold and owned by an individual, I would still own and maintain control of that and still have that decision to make. So there's a long period of time between now and then.
And are you planning on doing this all at once or in phases?
So most of the construction for grading and stormwater, water, sewer, all of that would happen at once. Paving out the street and punching through the access to Calhoun, that one might happen in a phase. But, you know, to come back and set stone and asphalt is pretty quick and easy once that happens. But again, most of that would just to be to stop the cut through while construction is going on.
Okay.
Okay, so how do you plan to prevent access to those walkways that?
It would be almost an honor system, you know, so it would be, we'd post signs that says community residents and guests only. And then at that point, it would just be residents sort of self-policing. It's not like we're gonna gate it off or you know, put up barbed wire fences or something like that. It'd be more or less an honor system type of deal. But again, like I told Steve in the town before, you know, if a lot of the things that are planned to happen on Calhoun actually do happen and sort of the revitalization starts taking place, we're not completely opposed to it.
And if that does not happen, what is your plan?
Well, it would stay maintained within the HOA. So the HOA would obviously, anything they own, they would own and maintain. So it's not like it's not going to get mowed or stay pretty. But if what it backs up to doesn't sort of happen, at least they have the ability to know that they own and maintain it, and they're not relying on the town to own and maintain it. And it's not an added burden to the town.
Are you entirely fixed on this layout, or I know there's been some optional layouts of this land here and this property. Are you totally fixed on this?
Before we get off on that, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me, I believe Daniel has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I
Daniel.
just want to make one comment that, just so everybody kind of is clear on this. This is, you know, privately owned development we're talking about. So, you know, if you think of that green space and walking area as a community pool.
Yes.
Or a tennis court, I mean, it's no different. This is an open green space. So in terms of conceptually for council to consider, you know, put a tennis court there, put a community pool there for this neighborhood, ignore what's on the drawing, and that's conceptually what you probably should consider when you're thinking about what the developer's gonna do initially. Now, obviously, there could be some later public dedication by the HOA if they chose to deed it over in some combination with the town. You know, you could publicly dedicate that, but, you know, it's probably gonna stay with the HOA unless there is, you know, some reason to, for connectivity purposes or wherever else, to make that public. But, you know, you're gonna have the homeowners are gonna be paying dues. And those dues are gonna go to maintain that area and pay for it. And so I don't think most people, just like with a community pool, would appreciate the public being able to come in and jump in their pool and use the pool when they're not paying anything to maintain it. So I just give you that conceptually. I think when you're thinking about it, it's probably easier to, you know, I use widget factories and things like that when I'm talking about partnerships and things like that. But, you know, imagine community pool with a clubhouse instead of this particular green space, and that might be easier for you to kind of visualize what they're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Mike.
No, that's fine. No, I appreciate that, Daniel. Because we got a new pool in one of the other subdivisions right now, so that actually came up earlier today. And trying to, you know, in the explanation, you know, of trying to understand all this, because we are talking about connectivity here. And we are talking about expanding our town radius here. You know, I always felt like the Morton Farm was kind of at the end of the radius. But, you know, as we grow, you know, we grow. So now it gets bigger.
Yeah.
So now we got to figure out how we all deal with all that. But I think my question was just, are we totally just locked into this particular plan? I know, you know, we've had a chance to talk before. I've seen other options, other plans. We've got another reading. We've got a second reading after that. I would love to move forward. I'm ready to move forward. I just had that last question.
Well, I think there's two answers to that.
That's a loaded question.
So let me make a statement as far as the process, because Lynn had asked me a question, which is why y'all have it there. What happens when there's a change that has to be made? I'm kind of looking at this and thinking of it in that way of change. You've had a plan go through your planning commission to have a public hearing on it.
Yes, sir.
Now, I believe that all through the process, you have the right to make reasonable conditions onto that plan that are reasonable as that plan stands. But you may have an argument, and Daniel may have to pipe up on this. If you go to majorly changing layouts in there, that may, before it's even approved, constitute a major change. You may need to start the process all back over
again. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that answers my question.
As far as I think the developer side of it.
Now, I guess when you're saying a major change, it'd be what's a minor change? But I guess if you, for instance, like, I guess Dave alluded to the fact a while ago, if you added density, I guess that would be a major change. Yes, sir.
There's a list right here.
If you, yeah, okay, I saw that.
It's a non-exhaustive list, but it is an example.
Okay.
Okay. So let me go back to that then. Let me just hypothetically, okay? I'm sorry. I just want to try to get this clarified as much as I can. If I was to take those two cul-de-sacs and somehow make a roundabout there and make a totally round street, is that a major change or a minor change?
I think the question at that point would be, when he laid it out, is it adding more density to the subdivision?
I'm not talking about density. I'm just, it might be less density, actually. We might lose a lot or two.
This list in here, it says include but not.
Yeah.
But not
More
limited
grading,
to.
more road building, more water, more sewer, more cost.
Okay.
Less lots. Financial viability is obviously a very important part for us.
Sure. That's why I'm asking these questions right now. Okay.
So can
I know these are tough questions. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I really am not. I just want to know, where we proceed from here. That's all.
Good question.
Can I ask?
That list that you were talking about, this fence, and I sort of said, I mean, like, you got these changes here. I noticed it does say, it's not limited to some of that. I mean, so it can be other things.
Yeah.
Other than that list, I guess.
So
So you just have to take that on a case by case basis, I guess. So anyway, that's all.
I think the answer, I mean, they would have to submit the change, Mike, and we would have to look at it to see, did it create more lots? Did it create less lots? Did it create something that we feel like, based on the guidance from the ordinance, would constitute them having to go back through the process, which the process would be back to the planning commission, back to town council, through 3 different readings.
So we've already been down that. This is deja vu already. I don't want to do double deja vu.
Okay.
So when you ask, when people ask, because we've had this question, and believe me, I have my own feelings on PUDs that I've told several people on FRD what it can do, because there's a double-edged sword. But what protection do we have? Well, they have I don't know off the top of my head. I think it's 24 months to start development. Otherwise, they lose all rights. If they lose all rights, it may stay. It may stay, and you have this in town where you have stuff that's already rezoned to an FRD or a PUD that has lost all development rights. There's one right down the road here. So they have to go back through the whole process. In other words, you get a second shot at it. So you may get a third shot and a fourth shot, in some of these economies. But what's your protection if they build in here 15 lots and it stops? Then when the developer picks back up, you're making a determination, do they have existing vested rights, which is really a legal question. You have to follow some things to grant vested rights, to continue the development plan. And if you make that determination in a positive, then you go back to the original enacting ordinance that has a statement of intent, and that's what they have to keep doing.
Okay.
They can't go, if we rewrite the zoning ordinance, there's a brand new zoning ordinance. This thing is always an FRD if it gets approved or whatever was approved in 20 years from now, they have to do exactly what's in that statement of intent.
Okay, so with that said, this FRD, all the boxes have been checked. The planning commission has gone through all that. They've made a recommendation, correct? All right.
He's exactly right. I've been down that path before. I hate to say it, but I worked through as a lawyer the prior crash. Everything Steve just said, we dealt with it, saw it, had to deal with it multiple times. Developers going bust, subdivisions being barely built out with, scratch coat roads in there, not being taken over by the counties, you name it. Economy is a fickle beast. And you can't necessarily count on, certainly we don't wish for these guys anything but success. Nobody in this room would want anything other than a completed subdivision. But as Steve said, the protection is built in to the fact that you guys are going to ultimately create, if you agree to pass this, you create this district, that you've approved with the specifics. And, unless somebody comes in and asks to change that again down the road, that's what you got.
So the statement of intent, I read through it. I don't have it memorized. I read through it a couple times. We're good with the statement of intent the way it's written.
Everything is based off initially in this process. Is based off the preliminary plat and the statement of intent. There's a whole other part of this process that you go through, getting to finals, and they've set it out in your packet today. There's a whole other process that you go through that has to continue.
Sure, I understand.
You're only at the beginning phase of this where you've got a preliminary plat and a statement of intent, and you've had all this discussion about whether or not this is the best use for the property and all those things, but there's a whole entire rest of the process that you have to go through to get to the point of, and what this does, and Steve, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, the developer isn't gonna spend the kind of money that has to be spent on the engineering and the rest of the stuff that has to go on for the next phases of this without the commitment that they can move forward. That's really where you're at in terms of the crossroads of this. It's, are you guys going to give them the okay that gives them the comfort to spend the money to do the next phase of this? Or are they just going to pull out and say, we're not putting any more into it? I think economically speaking, that's really where you're at right now.
Thank you for those comments.
I mean, hypothetically, can we not subsidize some? I mean, here's the thing. Nobody wants the Grange necessarily. I mean, obviously some people do. I think they're not having any problem selling it out right now. But there's no way for me to drive by there and not think life on Mars. And, it's like this slab built, I'm all for affordability. I'm all for efficiency in building. I mean, can we get out of this development pattern and people still make a living? It's like, can you build a house on a crawl space without churning everything up and still make money? Like, we can hypothetically bond some of this stuff through the TIF to offset some of the asphalt price. But what are we going to get? I mean, we'd like to make it more affordable if people are allowed to walk down the street, and be part of Pendleton, not just a sign everywhere saying,
Pendleton.
I hope you qualify.
Listen, Sandra, do you want to make a motion? I'm ready to make a motion. Let's get back to the business.
Sandra's asleep. She's been snoring in my ear. It's terrible. Okay.
Sandra started all this. I'm throwing it back in your lap, Sandra.
Well, I would like to make a motion that we approve the resolution to accept the recommendation from the Planning Commission for rezoning Morton Farm from AF to FDR.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second on the floor. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your hand. All right, opposed? Okay, 3-2. Motion carries. All right, thank you, folks, for all the good questions and et cetera, and we're going to move on to the next item, which will be consideration of a resolution of the Pendleton Town Council approving the neighborhood revitalization plan. Can't say it. The passage of this resolution will formally accept the neighborhood revitalization plan for West Queen Street and surrounding areas. The committee for the project has approved the plan, and the Planning Commission has been provided the draft plan. Recommended action is approval. Any questions about that? Nope. Hearing none, then do I hear a motion that we pass this resolution?
I make a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Motion carried, unanimous. Next, we have consideration of a resolution authorizing the town administrator with the authority to issue a notice to other taxing entities concerning a tax increment financing district. This resolution is a result of the discussion item at the September 6, 2022 Town Council meeting. A requirement of establishing a tax increment financing district is a notification to the taxing jurisdictions. The passage of this resolution will allow the town administrator to begin the process. Any questions on that one?
Well, before we go, so we have a trip, it's here. He's just been working.
Oh, has he been hiding in
David-
there
he's-
somewhere?
He's been hiding in
Okay.
David's office.
Let me see.
He is actually here if y'all have any questions for him in person, since he had to attend virtually last time. And he can talk specifically about the TIF and what it's going to do and
Okay,
other
great.
things.
That'll be some good information. So welcome, Trip.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good. So you're going to enlighten us about the TIF.
Yes, sir. We are making progress. Going to make sure I don't have something go off in the middle of this meeting, because that'd be embarrassing. I provided to the administrator and staff updates to the TIF after consultation with bond counsel today. They made edits to it to correct some of the things that we were grappling with at the last meeting, just some difference in numbers. And part of that was bond counsel is really good because they're attorneys and making sure everything is T's are crossed and I's are dotted. And sometimes I had different numbers in there. All those are correct now. Also, we've equalized everything on just the statements. And there were a couple pieces that I knew bond counsel would catch that I missed, some land use pieces in the redevelopment of the district. And then the equalized assessed value of the district after redevelopment, which is a number that will probably continue to change as we go through the process. So at this point, I'm giving you an update that we are really ready at, sorry, I speak English here. We are at the point in the process where we're shifting from writing the plan to being ready to notify the taxing jurisdictions. That will start the clock ticking on a couple of time frames. The taxing jurisdictions have a 45-day response from notice to give their, well, first of all, if they do nothing, that means that they approve. And if they opt to negotiate or protest the district, then that would be something they do within that time. That 45-day time frame also provides us a chance, as your consultant, along with your administrator and staff, to have staff negotiations with the county and Anderson District 4, and in communication with the administrator and staff. I'm aware that y'all are already having those discussions and so far getting a very positive response. Part of that, as I told you at the last meeting, is because this TIF is about as clean a TIF as we could almost imagine, because that base value is next to nothing. It's generating extremely low values for the county and almost nothing for the school district because so much of it has been residential or vacant property in the past. And so I can't tell you that it'll be complete smooth sailing, but we're getting all signs in the right direction and bond counsel is paying good attention to us. I'll be in touch with Brad later this week. I think we've got a call scheduled later this week just to do the cover letter to notify the jurisdictions. that this is something we're proceeding with, and then we'll move into formal reading process. The only other part of that is within that 45 days, we have a 15 to 30 day window to notify the public and have a public hearing on the district. Because a district of this nature does not increase taxes on anybody within it, it basically just captures any of that increase in value. Most of the public hearings I've been a part of are usually fairly routine and not overly, they're pretty short. But I'll be prepared to answer any questions, because whenever you use the word tax, it gets a little weird. And again, we're not.
Yeah, what was the other name?
What's that?
The North Carolina name?
The North Carolina name, self-financing bonds. So
There
much
you go.
prettier name.
Self-financing
Yes.
bonds.
And so much more elegant name. But we're really moving in the right direction. The other piece is I'm working closely with your staff alongside Blake Sanders, and we'll be putting a small area redevelopment plan proposal together. I've been trying to encourage us to kind of nudge the financing piece along a slight bit ahead of the plan, just so that we know what we're making sure we're drawing in the plan and what kind of funding we have. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
The plan.
Pardon me?
You're strictly talking about the TIF plan, right?
Right now,
Small area TIF
strictly
plan.
talking about the TIF plan.
The funding side.
The funding side, yes. I do want to draw that distinction between the TIF plan is strictly the funding, pretty technical document as you've seen, and the small area plan will be more of, for lack of a better term, what I get excited about as a planner. How do we do the connectivity? How do we make sure the development comes in, benefits the residents of the community, perhaps connects the elementary school better with improved trail connections, pedestrian connections, and also explores the new public facilities that could be part of the plan in the future. So all that's exciting, but I'm one of these folks where I like the financial.
It's nice to have a budget.
Right. I like to have the financial stuff in order just ahead of time when we're doing it, as in when we plan anything, want to make sure that the funding is something we're not guessing about.
So with that, and I appreciate having the money in place, but the small area plan, and you talked about this connectivity, that will be public connectivity?
Yes, that's what we would envision. It would be public connectivity.
Okay.
Partly because the nature of the TIF financing plan is that any public dollars that are generated through the TIF have to be used to build public facilities on publicly owned property. And so there have been some creative ways that that's been done, where sometimes we need a developer to do things first and then kind of deed it back over. But that'll be something even that we can explore as we move. But you've got a nice window that we're incorporating in, and bond counsel even came back and said, I put a 15-year window on, when you could issue debt on it. He goes, well, why would you not do 20? So I switched it to 20 because it just gives you all more oxygen as counselors to make decisions down the road.
Got it. Thank you for all that. Appreciate that. Good seeing you live,
I know,
right
for
on the
once,
screen.
right? Happy to answer any other questions, Mayor, Council, anyone else?
Anybody?
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, and I don't know if you've gotten the updated version to them. It came off the
No,
press pretty
I
hot
got
today. Y'all aren't missing anything other than some of the numbers you asked about last time are corrected this time. So, well, great. Thank you so much, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Yeah,
information.
thank you. We really appreciate it. All right, having said that, any more questions? If not, do we have a motion to pass the resolution?
I make the motion.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimous. Okay, next we have consideration first reading of an ordinance amending ordinance 0604, providing for council rules of order and procedures at meetings and procedures for the enactment of ordinances and resolutions. At August 1, 2022 Town Council meeting, council directed staff to update the ordinance that sets the dates of town council meetings. The direction given to staff was to move the town council meeting from the first Monday to the first Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. Staff also updated the time limit.
We forgot to update that. We did not update the time.
You didn't do it?
We left it at 2 minutes.
Okay, well, we need to decide on that. I mean, I guess here, so we can put that in here. We just put the update in here. But anyway, the update for the time limit allotted to citizens. The ordinance reflected 2 minutes, and our practice during the meeting, it's like I say, for a long time, has been 3 minutes. But as we said, we want to follow the rules, so let's make our rules what we want them to be. So what's council's pleasure on that? What do you think? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something else, whatever?
I think 3 minutes. Let's not rock too many boats here.
3 minutes has been good so far, right?
So do we need
Let's
to make
leave
that
it that way.
amendment to the ordinance?
Yeah, we need to
When you
make,
make your motion,
yeah, so I'm good with 3 minutes. I think that makes sense. I think it's better than 2. I think you need to have enough time.
So we're moving to Tuesday.
We're moving to Tuesday.
I'm confused. Which number is it, 2 or 3?
We're suggesting 3.
Back to 3.
Yeah, we're
Currently, your ordinance says.
ordinance
two.
says
I
2,
told
but we've
you we
been
need to ask
utilizing
Sandra.
3.
So we never did the 2.
Yeah, we've
been doing 3.
It got switched by somebody somewhere down the line, and it's been 3 forever till we really started looking at this, and it's
We've
supposed
been
to
wrong.
be 2.
We've been wrong for
can't
like
believe
probably,
you let us
you know, a
do
number of
this.
years.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it,
supposed to be
Sandra.
I did not
And
know that.
Sandra, you
Chance to make it all right, Sandra.
you're never gonna get any of that time back.
Yeah, so we're trying to make it right.
That's good.
So we want to make it right. We're using 3 when we want to have the rules say 3. So everybody's okay with 3. I'm okay with 3.
I feel great about it.
Okay.
I feel good about Tuesday. It gives me more time to read the agenda.
Exactly. Mondays are
And
a
everybody
tough
else.
day anyway. So, yeah.
And we don't have to worry about moving holidays anymore, right?
Yeah, they probably
Very-
Labor Day and
more
stuff like
rarely.
that.
Yeah.
More rarely.
We'll have to rarely move for holidays.
All
That's
right.
good.
Oh, where are we at on this? We're gonna vote on this?
Yeah, we need a
Somebody
motion.
needs a motion with.
All right, I make a
change
motion.
of 3.
I make a motion that we approve
With the
this
3.
Yeah, with
with the 3, with the 3.
Change to 3.
And we changed it to Tuesday nights,
And change to 2 nights.
7
Okay.
o'clock.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next, consideration first reading of an ordinance for the issuance and sale of a not exceeding $825,000 principal amount waterworks and sewer system revenue bond, series 2022 of the town of Pendleton, South Carolina, providing for the payment of said bond and other matters relating thereto. Background on this, the ordinance results from September Town Council meeting discussion item to move forward with a meter reading changeout program. Once the ordinance is officially adopted, the bond will be bid out and we can lock in our quote for the meters and equipment. We're requesting the ability to fund up to $825,000 for this project, including all closing costs. And of course, that's to change out to the new, more modern radio read type meters, which will save us money in the long run and a lot of heartache and time, et cetera. So having said that, any questions? And if not, is there a motion?
I make the motion that we approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. And the motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Okay, and next we have consideration of second and final reading of an ordinance renewing the municipal service agreement for the provision of electric service by Duke Energy LLC for the town of Pendleton, South Carolina. This ordinance will renew the terms of the agreement with Duke Energy, and on June 4th, 2018, the town increased the franchise fee from 3% to 5%. This fee is passed on to residents on their Duke Energy monthly bills. Recommended action is approval. Any questions on that? And if not, do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a
Second.
We have a motion second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Okay, then we have a consideration of a second and final reading of an ordinance to rezone the following tax map numbers that you see in front of you to neighborhood commercial. Background on this is at Town Council's regular meeting in December 2021, Council directed the Planning Commission staff to review the current zoning of property in and around the area of South Depot Street and Cherry Street, as well as North Elm Street and East Main Street. Council asked the commission to recommend if this area should be rezoned to align it with the future goals of the town and to protect the characteristics of this area. This item was presented to Town Council as a resolution at the regular meeting on 7/12/22. At this meeting, council made an amended motion to accept the resolution, but included a request to have a work session with the Pendleton Planning Commission to gather further information on this item. Prior to this requested meeting, Town Council received input from this matter from the Appalachian Council of Governments as well as our town attorney, so no meeting was held with Planning Commission on this topic. Recommended action is to approve this for second reading and final reading. So having said that, any questions? If not, do we have a motion?
Is this the final reading?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. I'm gonna make a motion, we approve it.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimous. Okay, now I think we're down to the second session of public comments. The difference in this public comments section is that we do entertain questions. So if you have a question, we will try to answer it. And if we can't, we will get back to you just as soon as we can with it. Even if it's not at the meeting, if it's something we might have to research or something else. Anyway, having said all that, same rules apply otherwise. Is there anyone here that would like to make a comment or ask a question? I believe I saw it. Yep, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Yoriki Jaime. I live in 368 East Main Street. This is the property that everybody knows as Wine Hill. I want to bring back the oil mill after talking a whole evening about the Morton Farm, which actually literally shows us how much this community cares about our town and how much actually everybody's passionate, which I think is fantastic. I would love to bring back the oil mill to your attention once more. I think we all agree on the fact that the oil mill as a property, just 2 blocks of our precious downtown square, which is highly manicured, is not just an eyesore, it's an embarrassment for our town. And I think we have to start doing something. So my question for the council would be, and maybe also for our lawyer, is what is your plan of action to change that? And if I can get a serious update on what's been going on in the past 4 weeks after we had this last fantastic town council meeting, where everybody actually somewhat like brought everything to the surface, how embarrassing this property is for our town. So.
Okay, I'm going to defer to Daniel on that.
Well, Mayor, the complication is that there are actually 2 sets of owners, one of whom litigated an issue that was resolved recently. And what the primary owners, I'll call them, of the mill property, and the secondary owners trying to acquire the second part of that so it can be done all at one time. And so if it can't be done at one time, it's going to create issues regarding the cleanup. I don't know if you know the names, but Zaruf has a share of the property that's involved in this. And so you got the owners proper of the mill trying to deal with the Zaruf party to come up with a comprehensive ability to clean it up at one time. And of course, I'm sure they want contribution or they want to buy them out is what they want to do so they can do it all at one time. That's created, because it's private property, that's creating a complication that, that we have been trying to help intervene with and deal with. In fact, Steve and the attorney for them and I had a very productive meeting with the mill owners of the property, and that's when that issue was brought to light about the complications with the Zaruf piece of the property. And they've been very committed and very communicative about trying to get that resolved. And so there's been back and forth conversations with them over the last couple of weeks. And in fact, I sent a message this evening and said, what's the update on this? Are you making any progress with the purchase with them? They do have some, for lack of a better word, they have some requirements that were put into the settlement agreement that they had that I'm aware of, it's a confidential settlement agreement between the other parties that have some caps on dollars. And there's been some pushback on one of the parties on that, and they have to be gently reminded that there are issues to be resolved, or they're gonna have to go back to court to enforce a settlement agreement, which has nothing to do with them. But that's where things are kind of caught up right at the moment in terms of making any additional progress. As I said before, and I want to make this clear, is that, get on the path of attempting to enforce the ordinances with what's going on between the parties. I believe the likelihood is that we attempt to go that route, they file to enjoin us, or they file to stop the progress and litigate that just to delay it further. You tie up in the courts and through possible appeals and expenses, and you don't get anything done. So we're balancing between trying to get the resolution as quickly as possible with pushing everybody forward with the risk that we end up in protracted litigation such that nothing happens for a long time. Because if it gets tied up in the courts right now, unfortunately, I don't think the townsfolk are going to be happy with the result, because you got to realize it's private property, which means anything that we do, anything that we attempt to do as council with that property, or with ordinance violations or moving forward, is always subject to judicial review. And so we can take them kicking and screaming. And we will if we have to go that route, and we're not giving them an indefinite amount of time. But understand that if we do that, the real possibility of what their lawyers have said to me is, you're not gonna get anywhere doing that, because we're gonna tie you up until we can have time to do what we need to do in litigation. We'll tie you up in court so that you can't make us do certain things. And so that's what we're trying to balance. And I know it's difficult for everybody to understand who's living in it. It's like my client that I have who's living with 3 feet of their, sheetrock cut out of their house because their house is flooded twice from drainage problem. And we've had to sue Anderson County over it. And I can say that because it's public record. The case has been pending for 2 years, and my folks are living in a house with their sheetrock cut up like this because the threat of flood still exists. They haven't fixed the problem. We have torrential rain, which we were just worried about the hurricane coming in. They got 25 sandbags stacked up at the back of their house in the garage because they can't do anything else. They can't fix their house, or it might flood again. They've already done it twice. And it's the same circumstance here, which is basically you can go down that path, but you get into the suits and things get tied up. So we're really trying to delicately balance the two competing owners and the lawsuit settlement they have on the one hand, our rights to enforce our ordinances and trying to do those, on the other hand, of being tied up in litigation that doesn't get you a quicker and more satisfactory result. Now, as I said, what I'm advising council is to give them some limited rope on reaching a solution. And I know a month doesn't sound like, 2 months doesn't sound like. In litigation, though, right now we're looking at 24 to 36 months to get a court date. In litigation, you have to try a case. Okay, so because we lost a whole year from COVID.
Well, we lost so many more years. This is an issue since 10 years, as far as I remember, because I've been living there for 15 years. We've been seriously super patient with the town, but our patience is over. If some hurricane like Ian Chuck comes in, I know the timer's off.
Yes, ma'am.
And
But
when
I
hurricane comes
appreciate
in,
your comment.
we are
I'm sorry.
actually in pure fear for our families. Just because someone is not cleaning up their property, I think it's embarrassing for a town not to do anything. Thank you.
Well, we're doing something. Yes, ma'am, but thank you for your comment. We do appreciate it. Next person, anybody? Yes, sir.
Carl Picorni, 161 East Queen Street. There are 2 other property owners involved there too.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Has there been any enforcement action against them? I think that the railroad certainly should be an entity that could be, they own an in-holding and along the railroad, and then Duke Power has an in-holding.
That's a completely different story with those guys, and they're not active participants at this point in the general cleanup. Because you had the start of the demo out there and a plan that was supposed to go. That's why it looks like a bomb over there. And it does. I've been representing this town for a long time, and it is. Everybody agrees it's terrible. I don't think anybody sitting up there doesn't think it looks awful. But again, the problem that we have is, and the thing that I need the town folks to understand from a legal perspective is it's private property. And I know I keep trying to tell everybody that, and it's the same thing with, you know, this green space that we talked about and connectivity through private property. And the biggest discussions that we've been having in the town since I've been coming the last couple of months to the meetings is the limitations that a municipality has to do certain things on private property.
I understand that.
Yeah, I know, and I'm just saying that those particular entities, first of all, the railroad doesn't get told anything. Duke is about just as bad in terms of what they're willing to do, but they don't see themselves as major players in the issue. It's the owners of the private property. And so those owners, various owners of private property are the ones that we're trying to wrangle into. They're the ones that stand up the risk of losing their ownership. Duke and the railroad aren't going to lose their ownership of their rights of way to the property.
There's also the issue of nothing can be done with that property with those two in holdings. Those have to be, I mean, we need to address it all. Nobody's going to buy that property and have a rotting, oil tank filled, leaking railroad property in the middle of it. I understand the process. I'm just saying we need to be moving on that.
And mind you, that's a good point that you make. Is, you know, you understand that the cleaning of the surface of the property, the taking away of the debris from the demolition, is a completely separate issue from the ultimate environmental cleanup that may have to occur with the property, and the expense associated with that is an entirely different issue that has never been touched on here. That's something that the owner is going to be responsible for. It might have to go through a brownfields project, you know, to get super funding involved and all kinds of other things. All that's been argued about or complained about, with all due respect here, is the surface cleanup.
And I do, you know, the county has told people over and over they'll waive the landfill fees. The mayor and I met with the county administrator, their attorney, the representative for this area, and the true statement from the county is what you're going to pay is cost. And what I would tell you is that immediately adds about $250,000 to the cost that we have for labor. And so that's the surface material only. We're not even talking about tanks. We're not talking about.
I want to say to add to that, Steve, that everybody should understand that's a moving ball.
That is a moving ball.
It's been a moving target that we've been trying to deal with the owners and the county and all the people that we've been trying to offer and coordinate to get a solution to this as quickly as possible. If other government entities would not move the ball and stick with what they told us to begin with, we might be further along. But, you know, you end up telling the owners that you think you're going to be able to get your dump fees waived, and then you end up saying, no, it's going to cost you $300,000. Sorry, county's not going to do that. And you're figuring in all the cleanup costs, et cetera. Now we're going back 3 steps. Not because of anything we did, you know, but that's what's been going on. So we're trying to keep everybody in this and trying to convey that there's a common good to be had by everybody cooperating to get it done, where everybody wins. Because the opposite result of that is everybody loses, guaranteed.
We've taken developers that we know are well capitalized, well experienced in this. We've taken them back over the last month back to the owners and the litigants. But as Daniel said, there is a process outside of our control. You know, we're just trying to provide them people that know that can meet the terms of that confidential settlement that they have advised us of to help them. But it's not our decision on who they pick.
Yeah. We have, I believe, Amy in the back. Let's come up again. Come on up, Amy.
Hi, Amy Trick, 362 East Main. So I would like to know, we have no schedule. How long am I going to be living next to this? I bought my house, I closed in October of 2021, when there were ordinances posted on that mill saying it was going for auction and all this stuff. I bought it and it was in bad shape, but not the shape it is now. How long am I going to have to live like this? Okay, everyone keeps dancing around saying there's moving targets, there's all these moving pieces. You know what? The mill has been like this for decades. I lived in Pendleton for a minute as a grad student, and it was in bad shape then. A building had fallen on the railroad tracks. So what is the schedule? I want a real timetable. I'm tired of being told over and over again that, you know, we're doing everything we can. I'm not saying you're not trying, but you're not giving me any tangible results or anything to look forward to and telling me, oh, it's a 2 or 3 court battle. Last time, if I remember correctly, it was recommended that I try to file litigation against the owner. That also will take 2 or 3 years. So we're going to live in squalor for a minimum of 3 years? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that correct? Is that the decision of this council and your lawyers that we will have 3 years like this, minimum?
Can we just game this out for a second? If money was if we had $1 million to throw at this, what could we do?
Well, I can tell you that it doesn't matter how much money you have. Because the fact of the matter is, once you try to take action against the owner a certain way, you can't stop them from seeking redress in the court. The issue is not money. The issue is if the owners want to try to protect their investment in the property and try to get a buyer to buy them out of it so that it's not a dogfall for them or a loss, you don't control what the other party does. You can't control what they do if they have the right to seek redress in the courts. So while I understand the frustration, the fact of the matter is, it's just like my folks who are living in a flooded house with their sheetrock cut up, been that way for 3 years. We're in litigation. They're gonna live that way, and there's not anything anybody can do about it if you're in the court system. So unfortunately, you're not gonna get a definite timetable or schedule when you don't control what the other party does. That's the problem. I don't know that you realize. If you sue them, like you said, you sue them, and they have their lawyer files a defense, and you litigate the case for 2 or 3 years to get to trial, and then if you win and they appeal it, then you go another year or 2 years through the appeals process, and where are you in 5 years?
Do you also recognize, though, I'm a single person, you're an entire municipality. Like, I don't have the budget to just throw around court cases.
I'm not suggesting that you do it. I'm telling you that I represent individuals on a daily basis, and I tell them the same thing I'm telling you, which is that the judicial system is not perfect. The fact of the matter is, everybody has the right to access to the courts. And I'm telling you that just because you and I might agree and go in and think we've got a great case, somebody is sitting on the other side of the fence thinking everything we're saying is wrong. And they have the right to put that case up and that defense up. And that happens every day in every court in every state. And that's what you face. So unfortunately, it is I understand you are terribly frustrated, everybody. With all due respect to you, you have every right to be frustrated.
Oh, I know. Thank you, though.
The point I want to make to you is that, you know, we are working within the balance that we have to try to push this thing forward. And what I'm telling you is that pushing in the direction of just absolute brute force, we're going to do this. I've already been told by their lawyers it's going to result in protracted litigation, and you're going to get nowhere. They've already point blank said, that's the direction you go in, but you're going to force this. We're not going to lose $500,000 million that we have in this deal. We will fight you on it as long as it takes till we can get this offloaded in a meaningful way to us. So if that's the direction that you think is smart to go in, and that's what you're pushing for, you might get it anyway, because there may be no other resolution. But I'm telling you, I've been told it directly, and I know their lawyer well. I know him very well. He's a good litigator, and he's an excellent appellate lawyer. And he's on par with what I do in terms of lawyers in Anderson County. And if he tells me that's what he's going to do, if he has to do that to represent his client, it is not a bluff, because I know it. It's just like if you get a letter from me, I'm not bluffing. And he doesn't bluff either. And so if he tells me that's what he's going to do, he's not threatening me. He's telling me what his client's already authorized them to do. And so I'm trying to get everybody to play ball together to come up with a comprehensive solution. I've been doing more time on this case than any other case I've worked on for the town in years, trying to get this. In fact, I emailed him tonight and said, is there any more news? Trying to get a message from him, but I know he's coaching soccer tonight, so he's not going to tell me. But in any event, my point to you is, and I hope you understand this, I don't have a vote in this. I provide advice. But I want you to be assured, these folks up here have tasked me with staying on this. I mean, Steve and I emailed about it at least twice in the last 2 weeks. What's going on with it? You know, you got any updates? So we got an update. The update was we're still trying to work with this Aruj guy to get a solution. So that's the most recent result that we got. I don't want you to go from the fire to the frying pan with the solution here. I want to give it the opportunity to get a quicker solution. And if we don't get it, at some point, everybody's gonna say, it's not gonna happen. We're just gonna have to go the court route and move the process along. And that, we're getting to that point.
Okay, I know my time's up, but how long are you giving them before you go that route? How, like,
Well, we
what's?
did this, we scheduled and had a meeting, which was the first thing that we finally got to do about, what, 3-4 weeks ago?
Yeah, that'd be
So we
about right.
finally had at least a meeting with them together to discuss these things where we said, we gotta have this done. And I mean, every email that I've sent to Dave has basically said, look, people want heads to roll. I gotta have answers. People are really mad. The people out, last time after I left the meeting, I literally sent them a message at 11 or 11:30 at night. I texted them and I said, people where there were pitchforks and fire, I didn't have a good time. And I'm getting impatient with waiting on your clients to make a decision. So we have to move this. I texted them at 11:30 and told them that. So it's that serious that, I'm communicating with them and saying, I had to be awake till 11:30 for a council meeting. I'm waking you up with a text message so that you know that this is serious. People really want something done here. So I want you to understand that, okay? And please understand that it's not gonna be an indefinite period of time. Maybe a few more months. If we don't get anywhere in a few months, these guys are gonna tell me when they say, all right, enough, file your papers. And that's not up to me. I don't get to make that call. But the communication is very regular with the administrator and I, and he's always aware of what's going on with it. I'm sure he's reporting to council along the way as he needs to with what's going on with that. But we're trying to walk a fine line. Like I said, the biggest impediment most recently was we thought we had a deal where we were going to be able to get the owners and the county to work together on a cleanup expense where they would hire privately to do it and the county would waive the dump fees. And that would save that money, and then it would also save the environmental side of having to test every truckload because it's done by private owners. And the county came back and said, oh, no, we'll do it at cost. But when that adds $250,000 to your private owner's budget for cleanup, now they've said, whoa, time out, dude. That's not the direction we were looking at going in to do this cleanup in Pendleton. So
Well, our
everybody keeps
county,
stepping back.
I just want to say, we have elected officials at the county level too.
Yep.
And that we need to.
Let me say this, the county sold the landfill to Waste Management. So it's Waste Management
Calls the shots.
that's causing the shots, and Waste Management has communicated, best you can do is cost. So
There's no way the county officials can have any impact on it.
it's private property now, that you have a right to dump in because it's Waste Management. So Waste Management sets the rates. And that,
So we need to move on, but if somebody else has a comment, question, let's just go.
All right, but
because,
can I ask one quick question? Hopefully it's gonna be a quick question. Can we at least, I know this is not gonna help the major part,
Thank you, I understand it, I know
but
what
can
you're
we
saying.
get the grass mowed?
I doubt it.
Can we get a fence around there?
I don't wanna, I mean, just,
I mean, anything you do
At
to
least
start
temporarily.
triggering a reaction, and I guess that would be something probably need to have a closed session, talk with Daniel about what the exposure to you guys are, because
so
it's-
are we continuing to cite him for that?
we can continue to cite him, but we have, at some point, we have to bring those to court too. So, I mean, there's just not a clean way to do it.
Hang on just a second, hold on. Just wait a minute, I have to recognize.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm done.
Okay, I want to make sure you were.
Thank you.
Okay, now, I'm taking it you want to make a comment or ask a question. And we know who you are, but if you don't mind, just say it.
Thomas Shirley, 111 North Elm Street.
Yes, sir, you go ahead.
Since he works for the town, are those emails Freedom of Information Act? You can't get those to try to push even more? I mean, I want to do something. I mean, as quick as possible, because we have lived with it for a decade now. And I know it's private ownership. I've talked about all, I understand that.
Yeah.
But it sounds like communication between the two is just the most difficult. And I've tried to get in touch with John and the owners, because I have the easement on their property, right beside my house. I would love to be able to buy that little strip. It's useful to no one else, but I can't get in touch with them. And it's just the communication. And if I
I
can.
can tell you their lawyer is David Rousseau. You want to get in touch with him, call the lawyer.
David Rousseau?
That's who I have to call.
Okay, okay,
He's an Anderson.
okay.
So
Well,
that
that's
that
good
helps you
information.
call them, but but we did, the first thing, when I first got involved in this, that was exactly the comment that I got from everybody was, we can't get John to communicate with anybody. He's not doing anything, he's not moving. So the very first part of that communication that I had with Dave was, you're gonna have to get somebody else with authority to make decisions for him, or we're done.
Right.
Now, be done.
Right.
And so they put Beth in charge, I believe, with my power of attorney.
That's right.
So she has the authority, and she has been very responsive.
She's very responsive.
Since then.
And I believe I gave you her
So
information.
you did.
The other day.
You did.
So that, I'm just telling you, that was the very first thing I did, because it was very clear this was affecting everybody. And I said, if I don't have a point of contact, somebody's gonna make decisions, well, then we might as well go down the path.
Right.
And not work
Right.
with this, because we're not getting anywhere. And I mean, the ostrich in the sand is not working, that just doesn't work. So we do have a point of communication. The reason we've been willing is because we haven't had a long time, not a few months, I mean, that's 3-4 months ago. We've had that communication channel that's been open, or it wasn't open for a long time. So that is open, and they are being communicated, and so we're trying to allow them some opportunity to make some progress and get some things done here. Now, I mean, in real time, months are a long time. In legal time, it's not quite as much, and I know that's frustrating, but it is for me too. I love trying to case in 3 months and be done with it.
Right. Right.
But in any event, that communication does exist, it's better.
Okay, it's better than the recent history.
Better, way better than recent.
Okay.
And like I said, I mean, I have the ability, to contact them, I know it. I have the ability to contact them between the two of us, just in regular communication. And just make, hey, what's going on, contact us, can you tell me what the latest update is? To a personal phone, that's not even a business call, it's me and them.
Right.
Like I said, I bugged him at 11:30 at night, just because I had to stay up and be here, I want him to realize for his client to say, hey, man, this meeting took till 11:30, people are mad.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Oh, yes, sir, come up, Byron.
I'm not totally sure I understand this, but Byron Edwards, 220 North Broad Street. But it does seem like everything comes back to private property rights. And you're saying that the dump is a private property. Amazing set of issues. So there's no way to lean on them because they're private operators. And even though they are a county dump, the county officials have no clout.
I would not say that, but what clout your county officials have with waste management, the dump, as a dump, would be a question to ask your county folks rather than asking us. I mean,
Well, I think that's what you were referring to.
Well, right, you gotta go to the county administrator.
We need to
talk
lean on
Rusty
the
Burns. Yeah, talk to Rusty Burns, talk to your council member, and see if there's any persuasion to get them to be any more cooperative than they're being, regarding this specific issue. That certainly is not within the wheelhouse of this region, but yes, I mean, beyond that, obviously there are state officials. There are people that you go to up the chain, see if there's any relief that can be gotten from this, all the way up, to the state house, go to the office, go to the state senator, and see if they can persuade anybody.
I might want to get the name of the dump from you, Steve, but I think we probably need to figure out a way to do some kind of petition and then maybe go see some people. But I do want to bring up one other thing, and I understand Ben's trying to work with us, but in my naive way, I thought that when we showed all these walking trails, it was going to be a public amenity. It's not, correct? So the connectivity that we all thought we were going to get, we're not getting. That's the problem with developer communities. They are, whether they're real cul-de-sacs, that's a cul-de-sac. That wetland, which I believe is public land, it's a wetland, isn't it? The creek is not a public land? It is inside, it is in most of the low country, so I don't know. But the question is, can the town consider, and whether the developer will allow it, having those be more public and we maintain them? Because I think that's the whole point of this connectivity question that we keep talking about, is if we have a village or we don't have a village. That's not a village.
Well, I agree with you, and I think though, the simple answer to that, go ahead.
I was just gonna, first of all, again, it is a private property issue for the developer, but, if you bought a house in the neighborhood and you're developing that development, I don't know that you would want to have the public coming through the middle of your neighborhood, and that becomes a concern.
We do it now. People walk through my neighborhood all the time.
You're not in the neighborhood.
What do you mean I'm not in the neighborhood? I'm not in the subdivision. I'm in a neighborhood. That's what this town is full of, is traditional neighborhood.
Yeah.
Well, the problem, there's a distinction that you're making, and it's a good one to make legal. If there was, you have a public road here that this fronts on and another one at the back there. And, it's conceivable that, council on public property could designate bike paths or bike trails, but when you want to go into the private property realm, you don't have the ability to force private owners to.
I didn't say force them. I said consider, public. If they're not, the homeowner's not paying to maintain it. Would that be a way?
But it's gonna be on private property. So unless there's a dedication of a specific pathway that goes through the property.
I mean, it's
to the
not,
town.
I'm saying right away.
And that's even the tip, even the guy with the tip was talking about how those funds can't be used unless it's on public property.
All right, well, I had to ask the question because I think a lot of people are of the belief that opening up East Main with a walk street is gonna make it a walkable thing for everybody. It's not, it's a walkable thing for the community and the guests.
Yeah, great question.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'll just address quickly the walkability as well. Heritage Oaks has a back way into its subdivision. Unless there's a nuisance
Who are you,
issue.
sir? Did you?
Oh, Scott Ward, 135 Mikasa Drive.
Who's that?
And just quickly, I mean, if you think about Heritage Oaks, they have a back way in. I walk it all the time. Unless you're a nuisance, it's not gonna be an issue. I can't imagine the town wants to buy 9 acres and open it as a park with no parking, no entrances. I mean, this is an amenity for that neighborhood. You could look at different ways of doing it, but as far as that pathway goes, he's already said there's not gonna be a gate on it. So anybody who's wanting to walk through that side of town, because that'll get you onto the sidewalk as well.
Yeah.
The other quick thing that I was gonna bring, I could see Sandy going here if you're quick, is raised slabs. So if you don't understand slabs, raised slabs, slabs on grade, drive into Heritage Oaks, not Heritage Oaks, Nehan Falls. Go to the first 2 cul-de-sacs. Lou Robinson's house is about 9 feet off the ground, and it is a raised slab. Her deck is about 12 feet off the ground. Mike and I drove over there so that people can begin to understand, because I had a long conversation with Tom Church and his wife, and they just could not understand how you could have a slab 9 feet up in the air. That's how you build raised slabs. So if you have any concept of that doesn't make a lot of sense, drive into that neighborhood. You'll see. All right, thanks a lot.
No, thank you. All right, anybody else?
I have a question back to the oil mill, if we can go back there for a second to our attorney. I'm sorry, but I gotta ask. The railroad, you said you've contacted the railroad? You have not contacted the railroad, okay?
I have not.
You have contacted the railroad, okay.
I called the lobbyists down in Columbia, and they sent a field crew out here. And I will tell you the exact words from the EPA to me about the railroad is, they have more power than God when it comes to the EPA.
They do.
So we're not gonna get a whole lot on them. They came out and looked at what their property is and what they believe would endanger, running of the rail line. And that is all they're concerned about.
Okay. I appreciate that. I get that. But let's hypothetically get to the point where we're going to finally get to clean up this property. I don't want to wait to get on the railroad's property once we get to the point where, we've got these other private, owners, permission to go ahead and start cleaning up the property. So are we working with the railroad going, hey, are we gonna at least be able to get on that property and clean that up?
Okay, it's not our job right now to work with the railroad. It's our job to set the expectations of what the private property owners are supposed to do. As they do the cleanup, it is their job to work with the railroad in order to, at whatever point, if they need to be on their right of way, to obtain the right of way to do it. John Sitton actually has a deed that he has a right of way there, and it's probably one of the few deeds I've ever seen that I believe gives him the right, as long as he doesn't interfere with the train, because he has a sideline in there to work within that railroad. If we go back, what I have been told in the past is you're going to pay a daily fee to work in that right of way. The town is. And you'll probably have to pay for a railroad inspector to be on site and work in there. And that's just, just another added cost to it.
Well, to the extent they have agreed that they've gotten under the railroad easement, the railroad could say to the private owner, you can get that debris, put on their call.
Okay. So is there something temporarily we can do? I've looked at a lot of construction sites where they put the fencing up and they got the silk screen and all that. Is there anything that we can do, public access around that area to at least make sure that nothing's getting blown around? And
The problem is that it's so narrow to the road, the property comes to the road that's difficult. I think there was some discussion about looking at whether or not there was any space to put that, because it's so close to the road.
I believe they own the sidewalks too.
Yeah, so the point was, once you get off that property, where you have to put your fence on your public property would be essentially in the road. I think that was the discussion we had before, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe it.
So could we conceivably ask them if they can cut 10 feet away from the road and keep the 10 feet cut? Yeah, I mean, maybe we could ask them if it would be voluntary if they would do it.
Okay.
So
That's kind of what I'm asking.
Well, and I don't think that's necessarily a problem with saying, can you guys at least make 10 feet from the sidewalk decent?
Okay, so the other thing is the rodents, I know once we start stirring that up, we're gonna get to cleaning it up at some point in time, sooner the better. But, then they're gonna start scattering all through the neighborhood. I've heard that I haven't seen it firsthand, but I've heard we've had a pretty serious rodent situation over there. Can we work with the owners and go, get an exterminator over to figure out, is there something we can do? I'm not saying there is, I'm just saying get some experts in here to see if there's something we can do in the interim period.
Yeah, I mean, I have a farm and I have field goals, and that's probably what you have over there is mostly field goals and big mice and the big ones. And probably a good dozen cats would help you out pretty good out there to get rid of mice. But
I agree with
not
that.
to be sarcastic, but typically that's what solved my barn rat problem. But I'm sure.
Or snakes, and then we'd have a snake problem.
Cats get rid of those too. They don't like snakes.
But we're being facetious, but I'm serious. I mean, can we at least maybe explore that option, in the interim period,
We can explore that, and I think that's something we can continue to talk about. So, I think we just move on here. We want to talk to Daniel after the meeting. Some of these people probably want to go.
Well, I was gonna say, if y'all want to have the closed session with Daniel.
We can just have a meeting about it, because this could take a
I would
while. I mean, they're
just-
great questions,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, but I think in the interest of time here, do I have a motion we adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
We got a motion second. All in favor, raise your hand. Folks, really appreciate you coming out tonight. We're going. Yeah.